Chapter 872, Fairy Yin Xia 4. However, at this moment, Su Luo's pair of eyes was tightly closed, without a trace of waking up. If she was awake, she definitely would recognize who the person in front of her eyes was. Didn't know how long had passed. Su Luo faintly started to wake up. She opened her tired eyes and surveyed her surroundings. This was a dim and damp dungeon. Green moss had grown over in the surroundings. It was sticky and satiny to the touch. It would really make a person feel nauseated. A strong, pungent, and moldy smell was being emitted from within this stone room. Su Luo slowly sat up. Only at this moment did she discover that her entire body ached. It was as if she had been pinched by someone all over while fast asleep. Su Luo lifted up her sleeves and actually really saw that there were obvious purplish bruises on her white skin. So she wasn't dreaming, rather, it was reality. Su Luo supported her forehead and slowly tried to remember. The last thing she remembered before she lost consciousness was Fairy Yin Xia going crazy. She was even able to recall clearly Fairy Yin Xia chopping down with her knife-like hand. Afterwards, she lost consciousness and had no other memories. Could that old witch really be this petty? She would still pinch her while she was unconscious as to maltreat her? Su Luo always felt that this didn't seem likely. While she was doubting this, the sound of graceful footsteps reached her ears. Su Luo's eyes narrowed slightly, and being on guard, she looked towards the place where the sound came from. That was a spiral-shaped staircase. The first thing that appeared was a pair of small white boots made of sheepskin, followed immediately after by a white-as-snow skirt. The sound of glittering, jewel-like jade pendants pressing down on the skirt. Nimble and delicate, such an exquisite figure. Then followed by that face Su Luo was familiar with. Li Yao Yao? Su Luo's eyes narrowed slightly. In her heart, she secretly cursed her bad luck. When enemies came face to face, their eyes blazed with hatred. Now, she completely understood it. The one who pinched her to vent their anger and caused the purplish bruises was not the old witch, rather, it was the old witch's disciple. Jade Lake's fairy was dressed all in white. Every step she took gave birth to a lotus with many graceful postures as she walked towards Su Luo. Finally, she stopped about 3 meters distance in front of Su Luo. In this underground stone room there was a square, black iron cage. Su Luo was trapped inside this cage. And the Jade Lake's fairy was standing outside the cage with a relaxed posture. One wore a luxurious and exquisite skirt with a high-spirited expression. Her eyes contained a touch of a smile that was pleased with herself. One had on a dress full of footprints, contaminated by green moss, with her hair in disarray. At one glance, one could see that she cut a very sorry figure. Comparing the two sides, it was very clear and obvious. Seeing me must be really strange, right? Li Yaoyao smilingly looked at Su Luo, who was inside the iron cage. She was smiling so much that both her eyes and brows curved into an arc. At this moment, Li Yaoyao's mood was unprecedentedly great. At last, finally, this time, Su Luo became a prisoner under her, while she, Li Yaoyao, was standing high above, controlling her life and death. This kind of feeling was truly pleasurable. Li Yaoyao, how could you be so childish? Su Luo still cared about the purplish bruises on her body. Before she was unconscious, Su Luo was clear that her body did not have such serious external injuries and bruising. Since Fairy Yin Xia chopped her until she fainted, so it would be beneath her dignity to use these little tricks to retaliate against her. Able to secretly use such black methods, besides the petty Li Yaoyao, who else could it be? Su Luo had already woken up earlier, and when she saw the pitch-black footprints on her own skirt, she had understood. Li Yaoyao, from high above, looked down to cast sidelong glances at Su Luo and sneered. Becoming the king after defeating the enemy, now you are a prisoner. What qualifications do you have to rebuke others? Su Luo, you are truly spoiled. Su Luo, not to be outdone, with her smile overflowing, said, "What's so bad about being spoiled? Always better than some people who have no one to spoil them." The two people's words were unclear, but the meaning in it was clear to each other. Hearing what was said, the smile on Li Yaoyao's face could not continue to hang there. Chapter 873, Fairy Yin Xia, 5. She gave a cold sneer. Su Luo, with death near at hand, and you are still able to laugh? Do you believe it or not that now, I am completely able to slap you to death? The corner of Su Luo's mouth hooked into a cold sneer. Death is near at hand? How is it that I don't know of it? You can kill me? Haha, indeed a joke as big as the sky. Li Yaoyao arrogantly sneered. Do you know where this place is? Su Luo shook her head. Where's this place? Li Yaoyao cast a sidelong glance at her. Underneath the banyan tree lake. Underneath the banyan tree lake? Hearing this news, Su Luo's heart was indeed gobsmacked. Banyan Tree Lake was located in the Eastern Ling's extreme region that bordered the country of Western Jing. The waters of the Banyan Tree Lake was extremely fierce, with 9 bends and 18 turns. The water was known as a tomb for anyone who entered. But, with regards to Fairy Yin Xia, she had actually built a structure under such danger rapids. Jade Lake's fairy coldly smiled. The spirit energy under the water is isolated. You should not hope that someone will come to save you. Su Luo's thin eyebrows wrinkled slightly. Is it only me here? Are you lonely? However, it doesn't matter. Anyway, very soon, you will also be on your way alone. When the time comes and you arrive under the earth, then you won't be lonely anymore. Jade Lake's fairy howled with ha-ha-ha laughter. What about Ziyin? What did you guys do to her? Su Luo was not so worried about her own situation, but was very worried about Ziyin. After all, Ziyin was dragged into this because her. Oh, are you talking about that one from Purgatory City? Be at ease, she had already started on this road before you. On the road to the underworld, you'll have someone to keep you company. Jade Lake's fairy said, playing it down. However, Ziyin's name truly was annoying to some people. Having eaten a loss from Ziyin, Li Yaoyao's eyes flashed with hatred. What? Ziyin was dead? The blue veins on Su Luo's forehead popped out. Her complexion suddenly became malevolent. Her movements were very quick, like lightning. She stretched out her hand, directly clenching Li Yaoyao's throat. Are these words true? If Ziyin had died because of being implicated by her, Su Luo would live the rest of her life in guilt. Li Yaoyao never imagined that Su Luo's speed would be this fast. She, as a 6th rank, was picked up by the neck by 5th-ranked Su Luo and threatened. How could you ask her to swallow down this mouthful of shame? Following her neck being pinched, Li Yaoyao's complexion became flushed. She coldly snorted a few times, and in a hoarse voice said, You caused Ziyin's death. You are the actual main culprit. Shut up. A touch of madness flashed through Su Luo's eyes. Both hands pinched down with all her strength. The strength in her hand was astonishing. Li Yaoyao, suddenly, was unable to breathe. She struggled unceasingly. However, Su Luo simply would not give her an opportunity to struggle. A dagger suddenly flew out from her sleeves. With a swoosh sound, it directly inserted into Li Yaoyao's arm. Li Yaoyao cried out in pain. Su Luo, you are crazy. At this moment, Su Luo's eyes were scarlet red. In its depths was a strong expression of madness. Speak. Su Luo's pair of eyes was very strict. Ziyin did not die. Did not die. Li Yaoyao was pinched to the point of being unable to breathe, and said disjointedly. Once she heard these words, the madness in Su Luo's eyes immediately was restrained by a lot. She heavily pinched Li Yaoyao's neck and picked her up, and in a stern voice, asked, In the end, did she die or not? Cough, cough, cough. She really did not die. Li Yaoyao, who had been pinched by the neck, was lifted up with both feet off the ground. At this moment, she was violently coughing. At this point, areas of her face was purplish red. If Su Luo still wouldn't release her, perhaps in the next moment, she would die. Release me. Li Yaoyao was almost suffocated to death. Su Luo, in passing, threw Li Yaoyao to the ground, just like tossing a rag doll. Chapter 874, Fairy Yin Xia, 6, formerly such an insufferably arrogant Jade Lake's fairy, but now had fallen to the floor and coughed repeatedly. Her entire person appeared to cut an exceedingly sorry figure. From the place I come from, There is a phrase I really want to tell you, and it's known as "don't do it and you will not die." Su Luo stared at the fresh scarlet blood on Li Yaoyao's arm and coldly smiled. Don't do it and you will not die. If it weren't for Li Yaoyao deceiving Su Luo, saying that Ziyin was dead, then she also wouldn't have made a killing move on Li Yaoyao. Li Yaoyao fiercely glared at Su Luo. However, she found that she was completely unable to retort. Now, are you going to speak? Su Luo coldly smiled. Li Yaoyao raised her eyes and stared at Su Luo with a hatred-filled pair of eyes, with so much hate that she was fuming with rage between gritted teeth. What, now you won't say anything? The corner of Su Luo's mouth lifted into a sneer. That is to say, you want to try testing my cruelty again. Once Li Yaoyao heard Su Luo's words, her eyes narrowed halfway. Could it be that even if she kept herself far away from the prisoner's cage, that Su Luo could still do something to her? Humph, humph, Su Luo was merely bluffing. Li Yaoyao slowly crawled up. Her taunting gaze looked at Su Luo as if looking at an idiot. You are now inside an iron cage, and I am outside of the iron cage. What could you possibly do to me? Su Luo, if you have the ability, then bring it on. Just now, it was only because she wasn't careful and walked too close to the edge of the iron cage. So Su Luo, this slut, was able to take advantage of the opportunity. How could she make this kind of mistake a second time? As a result, while Li Yaoyao was speaking, she also retreated back until she reached a distance that she felt was completely safe. Li Yaoyao, it seems like you are really afraid of me. Su Luo looked at her with a mocking smile. Ha ha ha, truly the biggest joke under the heavens. I, Li Yaoyao, would be afraid you? Li Yaoyao looked to the sky and laughed uproariously. If you are not afraid of me, then why did you walk back so far? Su Luo smiled coldly and cast sidelong glances at her. Also, are you preparing to go back on your words? Even if I go back on my words, what can you do about it? Li Yaoyao gloomily looked at her and sneered. If you have the ability, then come and catch me. Li Yaoyao mocked and smiled. That iron cage was not made from ordinary materials. If Su Luo wanted to come out, it was absolutely impossible. Su Luo cast her a contemptuous glance. Wanting to get out was not a difficult matter. At that time, she was even able to walk out from inside the Demon Cave stone room, let alone this iron cage. If you must know, Su Luo had a huge trump card. However, to deal with Li Yaoyao, it didn't require some complicated methods. One could only see Su Luo's sleeves flip over. Suddenly, a cyan-colored vine suddenly attacked towards Li Yaoyao's face. The vine's speed was very fast. Seeing the cyan-colored vine, Li Yaoyao's mouth had a mocking smile. It was merely a small cyan-colored vine. How could it deal with her? Dream on. Li Yaoyao didn't even bother to dodge and directly stood straight up there. Meanwhile, a cyan-colored vine also flew out from her sleeves, and with rustling sounds, launched to intercept Su Luo's cyan-colored vine. It seemed to her she could not defeat Su Luo in close-quarters combat. However, she was still a 6th rank, and her cultivation in the wood element was definitely no worse than Su Luo's. As a result, a cynical smile flashed through her eyes. She was waiting for Su Luo to eat a defeat. However, very soon, she was unable to smile. Before her cyan-colored vine could fly far, it was ruthlessly smashed head-on by Su Luo's cyan-colored vine. Bang! A loud noise echoed, and Li Yaoyao's cyan-colored vine was smashed into fine powder in a flash. Green-colored plant juice was splattered all over the ground. Even Li Yaoyao's eyes immediately became straight. She stared in disbelief at the aggressive cyan-colored vine that now flew straight at her. She wanted to block it, however. She discovered that it was already too late to block. Worthy of being called variant red acacia tree, its strength was just that outstanding. Chapter 875, Fairy Yin Xia, 7. One could only see that acacia tree's vine, with swish sounds, coil around Li Yaoyao's delicate body, encircling her and wrapping around her slender waist, and immediately after, it pulled. As a result, the immortal-like Jade Lake's fairy was immediately flung away like a kite in the sky. With a swishing sound, she was flung to knock directly onto the iron cage Su Luo was in. Li Yaoyao could be considered to have some brains left. She returned to her senses when she was being dragged and protected her head. Thus, when she knocked against the iron cage, her skull was not smashed into pieces. Su Luo, what the hell are you doing? Li Yaoyao shouted angrily. Having remembered that time in the demon cave, when Su Luo still did not have a plant-type pet, this point, Li Yaoyao was certain of. If she had a plant-type pet at that time, Su Luo wouldn't have been messed with by her until she cut such a sorry figure. However, how long had it been? And she now had such an awesome plant-type pet. This was simply too excessive. Su Luo smiled faintly. Li Yaoyao, you want to deal with me? First, deal with my spirit pet, then we can talk. Not to mention, Su Luo's spirit pets weren't only this variant acacia tree. She still had the little divine dragon, this trump card, that hadn't come out. As a result, when Li Yaoyao had to deal with Su Luo, she was only qualified to be bullied. Su Luo, I will kill you. At this moment, the cyan-colored vine had just hoisted Li Yaoyao up and used another cyan-colored vine to whip Li Yaoyao's butt. That appearance was extremely comical. Li Yaoyao felt that she was unprecedentedly being humiliated. As a result, she shouted at Su Luo, "Want to kill me? Then come kill me." Su Luo was all smiles as she said to Li Yaoyao. These words of hers were copying what Li Yaoyao had said before. Li Yaoyao nearly vomited out a mouthful of blood from being infuriated by Su Luo, and she bellowed, "It's only because you are lucky to collect such a good spirit pet. Based on real skills, based on fighting one-on-one, you are simply not my opponent." Li Yaoyao was trying to use psychology. Unfortunately, this method might be useful against others, but with regards to Su Luo, it was completely useless. Su Luo smiled indifferently. "Fight one-on-one with you? Li Yaoyao, do you think I'm stupid? I have spirit pets. Why should I set it aside and not use it? Then for me to run over and fight you? You may be an idiot, but don't grab me to become an idiot like you." You. Li Yaoyao was infuriated until she nearly vomited blood. "You, what you? First, go beat my variant acacia tree and then we can talk. Why are you blindly yelling?" Su Luo rolled her eyes in annoyance at Li Yaoyao. Su Luo. Li Yaoyao was about to go mad from rage. However, Su Luo only smiled shallowly. "Li Yaoyao, just based on your ability and you dare strut around in front of me?" The acacia tree hadn't had an opportunity to show off for a long time. Now, it had a rare chance to help share Master's difficulties and worries. As a result, it performed very proactively, completely without Su Luo having to command it. It had completed all its actions by itself. It swung the cyan-colored vine and dragged Li Yaoyao to swing her in midair. One moment to the east and another moment to the west, one moment knocking her against the wall, another time knocking her against the iron cage. It played with her without restraint until it was beside itself with joy. Su Luo nearly wiped away some sweat. "Su Luo, quickly let me down. Let me down." The originally pure, cold, and arrogant Li Yaoyao now was shaking her tail and begging for mercy from Su Luo. "Now you are willing to say it?" Su Luo had her arms crossed, and she unhurriedly shot her a glance. At this moment, Su Luo, who was locked inside the iron cage with stained clothing, was unbridled and confidently at ease, as she steadily gained the upper hand. The exquisite and gorgeously dressed Li Yaoyao was toyed with until she was battered and exhausted, so weary that it was hard for her to cope. It was completely the opposite to the situation from a while ago. Quickly let me down. Let me down quickly." Another bang sound echoed. Li Yaoyao was harshly thrown to the wall. Chapter 876, Fairy Yin Xia, 8. It was not as if Li Yaoyao hadn't thought of doing what Su Luo did before, cutting off the cyan-colored vine. However, the problem was that she did not have such a sharp dagger on her body. Also, this cyan-colored vine was sturdy and unbreakable. Immediately following after was another heavy sound that echoed. Li Yaoyao was thrown onto the iron pillar of the iron cage. Such a strong hit, but the iron cage didn't even move a bit. There wasn't even a bit of cave-in at all. What Li Yaoyao just said before was not wrong. Didn't know what kind of material this iron cage was made from. If the person locked inside wanted to cut the iron bar to escape, this matter would be impossible. Su Luo placated the acacia tree. As a result, having successfully accomplished its goal, the acacia tree cheerfully danced around Su Luo in a circle. Only then did it happily return into her space. Su Luo had her arms crossed and arrogantly looked down at Li Yao Yao, who had been tossed onto the floor. If you had said it earlier, wouldn't it be better? Then, you need not have suffered this physical pain. Li Yao Yao's hands were clenched into tight fists by her side. Every blue vein on the back of her hand had popped out. Abominable, hateful. She bit her back teeth and fiercely glared at Su Luo. Su Luo, in the end, what kind of sin did I beget in my previous life, so that I would actually encounter you in this lifetime? Why do you have to vie for things with me every time? If you ask Li Yao Yao who she hated the most in this lifetime, Su Luo was entirely worthy of being ranked first in her heart. Su Luo faintly sighed and looked at her. Li Yao Yao, I think you are mistaken about one thing. Staring at Li Yao Yao's pair of beautiful eyes, Su Luo's complexion became cold. She stretched out her hand to count. First, it was always you who vied for things with me, and not me who contested matters with you. Second, it was always you who provoked me, and not me who provoked you. Third, since you wanted me dead, then why would I not fight for things with you? As a result, before you blame others, first think about what you yourself have done. Su Luo's eyes were cold and tyrannical. The Jade Lakes family had pursued her relentlessly, then struck at her and continuously chased to kill her. If it weren't for her lifeline being long, then she would have already died. How could she have lived till today? A cold light condensed in Li Yao Yao's eyes. I vie for things with you. Provoked you and chased to kill you, so what? I am the Jade Lakesley family's princess, and you are only mud on the ground. Just based on you, this kind of mud, think you are fit to fight over things with me? Su Luo looked at her in contempt. The corner of her mouth raised into a mocking smile. Then what about now? You, this noble princess, aren't you being stepped on under my foot by me, the soft mud, right now? Su Luo extended a feet and sneeringly stepped on Li Yao Yao's abdomen. This posture was extremely arrogant. You stole my third senior brother, stole my master Rong Yun. I will kill you. I will definitely kill you. How could Li Yao Yao endure having her body stepped on by someone? This was simply too shameful and humiliating. She secretly vowed in her heart, even if she died, she would drag Su Luo down to be buried with her. If they really liked you and had set their mind on you, how could others have stolen them away? Su Luo used a sympathetic gaze to look at her. Let alone, from the beginning, they never belonged to you. No, it was you who stole them away. It was you that stole them. Li Yao Yao screamed loudly in a crazed manner. That's you believing in your own lies and your own wishful thinking. Su Luo repeatedly cruelly struck at her psychologically. Su Luo was not a saint. If others harmed her and asked her to be magnanimous and generous, her heart had always not been that big. Whoever dared to provoke her 1/3 of a meter, then she would pay them back 10 times by 3 meters. She and Li Yao Yao were already at the point of no return. Now, she had an opportunity. Naturally, she must demand back some of these dead as well. Just when the two of them were in the midst of quarreling ceaselessly, the sound of ice-cold footsteps came from the spiral staircase. Su Luo cast aside Li Yao Yao, her gaze going towards the place where the sound came from. Chapter 877, Fairy Yin Xia, 9. If she did not guess wrong, then the person coming ought to be brightly colored phoenix with fluttering butterfly design moccasin. Step by step, walked down the stairs. As expected, it was her. This time, Fairy Yin Xia did not show up alone. At her side, her personal maid that attended to her also followed. This maid's appearance was delicate and not lacking much when compared to Li Yao Yao. If she was placed in the world outside, this lady's name would spread far and wide. However, she was only a minor maid at Fairy Yin Xia's side here. When she saw that this maid was holding something in her hand, Su Luo's eyes narrowed slightly. It was a small dish made of white jade. The small dish was filled to the brim with a black, ink-like liquid substance. Standing from far away, she was able to smell a strange scent. Su Luo really disliked this kind of smell. Seeing Fairy Yin Xia, Li Yaoyao's eyes turned, and suddenly, a calculating plan appeared from her heart. She did not get up and move towards Fairy Yin Xia while kneeling. Master, save me. Su Luo nearly beat your disciple to death. Li Yaoyao's eyes wept and sobbed. She cried like raindrops on a pear blossom, so lovely and pitiful. Adding to that the clothes on her body, and also her face that had been knocked purple and swollen unevenly. Simply too pitiful. If a guy saw it, he would surely rush up in fury to protect the young beauty. Fairy Yin Xia looked indifferently at Li Yaoyao and frowned. What happened? Master, she wanted to kill this disciple. Li Yaoyao's tears fell like a flood, weeping practically beside herself. This kind of her was truly too lovely and pitiful, inciting others' tender affections. You are saying that she wants to kill you? Fairy Yin Xia's tone was indifferent as she said, unable to determine her mood. Li Yaoyao thought that she succeeded, and immediately, her acting was full of even more zeal. Master, the injury on this disciple's face was made by hits from her. Li Yaoyao lifted the hand covering the injury on her face and pointed to it for Fairy Yin Xia to see. Sure enough, Fairy Yin Xia's complexion gradually sunk down. The injury on your face was made by hits from that girl? Fairy Yin Xia asked clearly, word by word. Yes, absolutely true. I asked Master to call the shots for this disciple. Li Yaoyao beseeched while weeping. However, she still did not forget to use the corner of her eyes to sweep Su Luo a pleased with herself glance. She wanted Su Luo to know that she did not need any sympathy. Fairy Yin Xia treated her very well, better than anyone else. As if only this way, she was able to satisfy her vanity. Just when she was secretly pleased, a clear, crisp, slapping sound could be heard, slap. A heavy palm fiercely slapped onto Li Yaoyao's face, immediately slapping Li Yaoyao stupid. Master? Li Yaoyao covered her red and swollen cheek that was slapped, lifting her eyes in disbelief, staring at Fairy Yin Xia. Master not only didn't help call the shots for her, she actually hit her with a slap. Fairy Yin Xia's eyes were filled with a sinister cold light. Not only didn't she exercise restraint, instead, she directly kicked towards Li Yaoyao's chest. How great was Fairy Yin Xia's strength? This kick of hers, how could Li Yaoyao possibly bear it? One could only hear a violent striking sound echo. It seemed as if Li Yaoyao's entire person was nearly hung from the iron cage. Afterwards, she slid to the floor, following down the bars of the iron cage. Cough, cough, cough. Li Yaoyao covered her chest and continuously coughed violently. Fresh blood flowed down along the corner of her mouth. It seemed really too shocking of a sight. However, Fairy Yin Xia's anger was still unresolved. She pointed at Li Yaoyao's head and cursed, roaring in a furious tone, "Slut! You are a 6th rank and was no match for her a 5th rank, and you still have the face to complain? Aren't you ashamed of yourself? How could I, Yin Xia's disciple, lose to Rong Yun's? You idiot moron." Chapter 878. Fairy Yin Xia, 10. Fairy Yin Xia cursed roundly. How could she still have the gracefulness from before? At this moment, inside the iron cage, Su Luo's eyes wrinkled slightly. So, it turned out that Fairy Yin Xia was only graceful in front of Master. In truth, inside, her temper was very twisted and malevolent. It was no wonder that Master, no matter what, didn't wish to have much contact with her. This kind of woman was truly too extreme and terrifying. Li Yaoyao could only cry and continuously weep loudly and bitterly. To think that she, as a princess of the Jade Lakesley family, who had been doted on from head to toe, now actually had to follow by this old witch's side. If she was not beaten, then she was cursed, this kind of daily life. Fairy Yin Xia coldly glared at her, not allowed to cry. Having heard what was said, Su Luo couldn't help but look towards Li Yaoyao. After being berated by Fairy Yin Xia, as expected, Li Yaoyao did not dare to cry anymore. She used her palm to cover her mouth and sobbed in a very, very low voice. She looked even more pitiful than a lowly daughter-in-law. Su Luo's heart inevitably had a kind of sympathetic feeling of sorrow. It seemed that this year of Li Yaoyao accompanying by Fairy Yin Xia's side, she had suffered a lot. Otherwise, with her haughtiness, she wouldn't have been this obedient. Compared to Li Yaoyao, the harsh homework that Master had assigned her was simply like soaking in a honey pot. Thinking about this, Su Luo rejoiced endlessly. After Fairy Yin Xia finished disciplining Li Yaoyao, her attention was quickly placed on Su Luo's body. After all, her coming this time, the main target was Su Luo. Apply this on her for me. Fairy Yin Xia's eyes instantly became cold and her gaze was full of icy hatred when looking at Su Luo. Su Luo's heart was suspicious and couldn't help but to wrinkle her brows. Wait a moment. What is that thing? You do not need to know. Fairy Yin Xia simply did not give Su Luo a chance to find out. Her wide sleeves swung by. Immediately, Su Luo only felt her entire body weaken, her body becoming numb. She couldn't even lift a single finger. Fairy Yin Xia once again waved her hand, and that iron cage without a lock gave a burst of crashing sounds. Immediately, countless black iron bars retracted into the ground. That iron cage seemed to have immediately disappeared in place. That maid, hearing Fairy Yin Xia's commands, carried the ink-black liquid in the white jade dish and walked, step by step, towards Su Luo. Su Luo was able to sense that strong odor that irritated the nerves for her sense of smell. She couldn't help but to frown. Still not quickly going and helping? Fairy Yin Xia grabbed a handful of sweet dates while she prompted Li Yaoyao to personally go administer the drug. After hearing this, the originally grieving and despairing Li Yaoyao immediately became exuberant. She stood up right away, and the pain on her body seemed to have disappeared in an instant. Li Yaoyao held back her expression and bowed towards Fairy Yin Xia. Disciple obeys. Afterwards, she turned around to face Su Luo. Su Luo's pair of eyes met hers and could clearly see that very fierce hatred that flashed past on her face. I protest. Su Luo's heart's unease became more and more clearer. Your protests are invalid. Fairy Yin Xia directly made a verdict. Li Yaoyao looked at Su Luo, the corner of her mouth hooking up into a very malicious smirk. Just for this moment, she had prepared for a very, very long time. The maid carried a tray painted in red. On the tray was a white jade dish and a brush, the type of large brush used to paint walls. A very dark and fierce expression flashed through Li Yaoyao's eyes. Without any hesitation, she picked up that large brush and dipped it into the thick, black-as-ink medicine. Su Luo forced herself to remain calm and showed a smile. She said towards Fairy Yin Xia, "What is actually in this thing? Is it possible for predecessor to tell me a little?" At this moment, a chamberlain had already carried a red sandalwood chair over and placed it behind Fairy Yin Xia. Chapter 879, Fairy Yin Xia, 11. Fairy Yin Xia gracefully and unhurriedly sat down. Her face remained indifferent, but the expression in her eyes when looking at Su Luo was very complicated. Seeing Su Luo ask, she did not hide anything. This medicinal juice is capable of restoring your true features. When Fairy Yin Xia said this sentence, her eyes were unblinkingly staring at Su Luo, afraid of missing any information that flitted by her face. However, she was disappointed. Other than shock, there was nothing else on Su Luo's face. Additionally, that shock didn't seem to be pretense. True features? Could it be that this face of mine now is not my original face? Su Luo's heart was extremely shocked. Fairy Yin Xia's eyes turned slightly chilly and subconsciously shot a glance at Li Yaoyao. If it was not for Li Yaoyao endlessly inciting disharmony by her ear, saying how, at that time, Rong Yun had planned to make her stand out while secretly protecting Su Luo, and in the end, he even accepted Su Luo as a disciple. Li Yaoyao said that Su Luo was exchanged 16 years ago and was raised in Su Manor. Nobody knew her antecedents. And just by chance, 16 years ago, that woman had given birth to a female infant. And at that time, the female infant's death was too tragic of a sight, and Rong Yun had personally buried her. After Li Yaoyao's continuous instigation, Fairy Yin Xia gradually also started to believe it. As a result, with her jealous heart and having been deceived, she directly went to find Su Luo. Li Yaoyao coldly smiled. Su Luo, you came from a great origin. Hasn't this face hid you? Therefore, you should first show your true face. Su Luo ignored her. Rather, she turned her head towards Fairy Yin Xia. Predecessor, if there is someone deliberately provoking you, intentionally conning you into obtaining your assistance in avenging their own private wrongs? Su Luo stared fixedly at her and again said, Predecessor, you are a smart person. If you ruin this face of mine, it is to publicly break off relationship with my master. Have you thought it through clearly? Mentioning Grandmaster Rong Yun, Fairy Yin Xia's complexion paused slightly. In her fluid glance, it was full of being at a loss. Li Yaoyao suddenly felt this wasn't good. As a result, she quickly added oil and more details. Master, Su Luo truly is the person you are looking for. On that day, in order to protect her, Grandmaster Rong Yun had sent this disciple to you. Could it be that you had forgotten the scene on that day? You had wanted to exchange me with Su Luo, but was Grandmaster Rong Yun willing? Fairy Yin Xia suddenly recalled the matter on that day. On that day, she spoke without thinking and suggested this proposal. But at that time, Grandmaster Rong Yun had told her to not make trouble. Fairy Yin Xia's hands were clenched tightly into fists. Just because of his words, she thought of their mutual affection from before. Her heart softened and did not continue to be stubborn. Nowadays, thinking more carefully about it, based on his impression of her, how could he have been so gentle? Thinking up to now, Fairy Yin Xia's sharp, sword-like eyes burst out with cold light, and in an instant, shot towards Su Luo. That pair of eyes was like ice blades, malevolent and terrifying. Smear it. Immediately have it smeared on for me. Fairy Yin Xia, in a furious tone, roared. She wanted to see if the alter the appearance to change the reflection technique was used on this girl's face. Su Luo, seeing Fairy Yin Xia explode in fury, knew that she had already made the decision in her heart. Even if she were to say more, it would be useless. Thinking of this, her faint gaze floated onto Li Yaoyao's body and sighed. You are truly completely unscrupulous, even dispatching you to here, you still won't stop. Li Yaoyao coldly smiled, lowered her voice and whispered into Su Luo's ear. The accumulated pain that you had inflicted on my body, I will, brush by brush, return it all back to you. Now, this is only the interest. Even if something truly happened to me, Nangong would still not want you. The corner of Su Luo's mouth held a sneer. In fact, she had harbored suspicions about it in her own heart before. Chapter 880 Fairy Yin Xia 12. She always had a feeling that the way teacher treated her was somewhat strange. If what Fairy Yin Xia suspected was true, Su Luo tightly clenched her fist at her side. Just at this moment, the brush that was soaked with the thick, ink-black medicinal juice Li Yaoyao was holding directly brushed towards Su Luo's face. However, Li Yaoyao obviously had forgotten one matter. Besides Su Luo's plant-type spirit pet, she still had another spirit pet. He was precisely the little divine dragon who had repeatedly trampled on Li Yaoyao. How could the little divine dragon let Su Luo suffer such grievances? He quickly jumped out. Even Su Luo wasn't able to stop him with a shout. One could only see his whirlwind-like legs. His two solid and powerful legs ruthlessly kicked towards Li Yaoyao's chest. One could only hear a burst of fractured bones sounds that were sharp and clear. Li Yaoyao's entire person was kicked flying, and she was sent crashing into the wall, causing a violent and distinct hitting sound. Fortunately, the wall was firm enough. Otherwise, the water from Banyan Tree Lake would have rushed in. The wall was sturdy, but Li Yaoyao's body wasn't that sturdy. Being kicked by the little divine dragon like that, the ribs in her chest immediately fractured into 3 pieces. It was so painful that she almost passed out. Unfortunately, this occurred too suddenly. Even Fairy Yin Xia, at first, also couldn't react. Only until Li Yaoyao flew out backwards did she suddenly wake up and realize. Fairy Yin Xia's wrist flipped over, a white light quickly condensing into a ball of light in the palm of her hand. Su Luo, seeing the situation wasn't good, wanted to forcibly place the little divine dragon back into her space. However, it was already too late, because Su Luo discovered that the spirit energy around her had completely been sucked away, so she simply couldn't take the little divine dragon back. In the next instant, Fairy Yin Xia's ball of light suddenly arrived. That basketball-sized ball of light was just big enough to wrap up the little divine dragon, fitting tightly. The little dragon was enclosed inside, shaking his tail and running around in circles. That pair of monochrome, clear and limpid eyes pitifully looked at Su Luo. Su Luo's small eyes met with his large eyes, because the her right now had no way of saving him. With no methods, Su Luo could only beseech Fairy Yin Xia. Predecessor, the little dragon is innocent. Could you release him, ah? Su Luo's tone was dim. Injure this fairy's disciple and release him just like this? Dream on. Fairy Yin Xia decisively refused to release him. It wasn't because she wanted to avenge Li Yao Yao. Rather, her own pride should not be provoked. Su Luo helplessly spread her hands out and said, "His background isn't small. If you have the chance, you can go ask my master." Mentioning Rong Yun made Fairy Yin Xia recall that woman that she would hate for a lifetime. Fairy Yin Xia angrily said, "Good. Since you don't want Li Yao Yao to apply it, then this fairy will personally do it." Having just finished speaking, Fairy Yin Xia had already arrived in front of Su Luo. She picked up that brush stained with ink-black medicinal juice and directly brushed it on Su Luo's face. Fairy Yin Xia's move was fast like lightning, her speed incredibly fast. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. In a moment's effort, Su Luo's white-as-snow face was painted blackish, simply darker than a charcoal face. Su Luo was depressed. Fairy Yin Xia coldly commanded Li Yao Yao, "Watch her properly. If there is a little bit of mistake again, see if I will spare you or not." Finished speaking, Fairy Yin Xia, dressed all in red, turned around and just about to leave. However, Su Luo yelled out and stopped her. "Predecessor, can this medicinal liquid be washed away? Which woman doesn't love beauty?" Her face being painted like this, Su Luo's heart was very worried. Fairy Yin Xia's footsteps halted and coldly sneered. "If your face had really been marked by alter the appearance to change the reflection technique, then after 3 days, your real facial features will naturally be restored." Chapter 881, Fairy Yin Xia, 13. What if I haven't undergone alter the appearance to change the reflection technique? To speak frankly, Su Luo had memorized all the medicinal books in beautiful teacher's study. Her mind could be seen as a small medical library, but this alter the appearance to change the reflection technique, she had never heard of it. Fairy Yin Xia looked back, casting a sideway glance at Su Luo. If your face really didn't undergo the alter the appearance to change the reflection technique, then this ink-black liquid medicine would stick to your face forever. What? Su Luo cried out in alarm. Right now, 2 paths were placed in front of her, but both paths were dead ends. If she had really undergone the alter the appearance to change the reflection technique, then after being restored to her true appearance, certainly, Fairy Yin Xia's jealous and twisted heart would vent her anger by killing her. If she hadn't undergone the alter the appearance to change the reflection technique, then she would be stuck with this ink-black liquid medicine on her face for the rest of her life. Then, in the future, she would have to live with this ugly face forever. Su Luo felt that she was simply about to go insane, being pressed by this old witch. No, this was still her thinking too positively. In reality, the situation now was worse than she thought. Even if her face remained pitch black like this, she also simply couldn't escape from this old witch's palm. She simply didn't have the opportunity to tell beautiful teacher her whereabouts to complain to him. Then, in other words, no matter the outcome, 3 days later, she would be killed anyway in order to silence her. The situation now had already become urgent to this degree. Moreover, what made Su Luo felt even more disaster was being piled on top of another Fairy Yin Xia finally remembered the little divine dragon's existence. Her long sleeve flung up, the ball of light in which the little divine dragon was trapped and rolled straight in her direction. And the little divine dragon was directly expropriated by her. The little dragon, seeing he was about to be separated from his master, immediately became anxious. He crawled around the ball of light, but couldn't climb out of it. As a result, he raised that miserable little face of his mouth flattened. With an innocent and having been wronged expression, he looked at Su Luo. Su Luo's heart was extremely sad from being looked at by him like this. Predecessor, you still haven't released the binding on me yet. Su Luo couldn't help but to open her mouth to remind her. If she had known earlier, she wouldn't have resisted. Now it's like this. Didn't know what kind of medicine this old witch had given her, causing her entire body to go limp, without even a bit of spirit force left. Fairy Yin Xia's figure paused. You girl is very crafty, full of tricks. It's better to keep the binding so I'd feel more at ease. Su Luo immediately was anxious. Predecessor, this is not fair. Fairy Yin Xia gave a cold smile. You want fairness? Then fine. As long as you can refine concentration restoration pills, then you can unblock the concentrated poisonous gas in your body. In Fairy Yin Xia's memory, 1 year ago, this girl was still an elementary apothecary. She absolutely had no way to be promoted to advanced apothecary within such a short period of 1 year's time. And to also refine the concentration restoration pills that a person at the summit of advanced apothecary could occasionally refine. Just because she firmly believed that Su Luo couldn't refine it, and that there wasn't a medicinal refining room for her to use to refine drugs, therefore, Fairy Yin Xia was able to so straightforwardly respond to Su Luo. Unfortunately, Fairy Yin Xia never would have imagined that due to Su Luo having top-rate equipment, she, as an immediate apothecary, could already refine advanced-level pills. Not to mention, in her space, she had top-notch equipment to refine drugs that she carried with her. Therefore, what Fairy Yin Xia thought was impossible, with regards to Su Luo, it wasn't a very difficult matter. Fairy Yin Xia carried the little dragon, turned and abruptly left. Now, Li Yaoyao had already crawled up. She looked down at Su Luo from up high, with a malicious and dark expression, mockingly said, "Buffed, you still aren't able to escape from my master's palm." Li Yaoyao looked at Su Luo's pitch-black face. Her original suffering expression immediately became happy. Chapter 882, Fairy Yin Xia, 14. After 3 days, no matter what, Su Luo would die. Moreover, very likely, even till death, she would be wearing that extremely ugly face. Just thinking about this, Li Yaoyao was suddenly wild with joy. With ha ha ha, she started to howl madly with laughter. But her being excited moved the wound on her chest. Immediately, she erupted into a period of violent coughing. The wounds on her body were all conferred onto her by Su Luo. Slut. Li Yaoyao lifted her hand and ruthlessly slapped towards Su Luo's face. Fairy Yin Xia and that beautiful maid had already left earlier. Furthermore, she had handed over the heavy responsibility of guarding Su Luo over to Li Yaoyao. So right now, she justifiably stayed behind in the stone prison. Because she was controlled by Fairy Yin Xia, therefore, Su Luo's entire body, right now, felt weak and lacking in strength, unable to move at all. This slap of Li Yaoyao's, Su Luo simply had no way to dodge it. Seeing that the slap was about to land, the corner of Li Yaoyao's mouth hooked into a sinister and crazed smirk of getting away with it. Just when the palm was half a finger's width away from Su Luo's cheek, a long green vine suddenly flew out of Su Luo's sleeves. In a split second, it wrapped around Li Yaoyao's palm and used a lot of strength to pull. Snap, the crisp and clear sound of shattered bones resounded. Ah! A shout of pain burst out from Li Yaoyao's throat. This damned green vine actually directly pulled until her wrist broke. Hateful. Originally, Li Yaoyao wouldn't have fallen into a trap so easily. When the variant acacia tree faced the 6th rank Li Yaoyao, it also didn't have an absolute, overwhelming victory. But it won at the point of catching her off guard. Therefore, Li Yaoyao lost. Li Yaoyao's pair of beautiful eyes stared fixedly at Su Luo, bursting out into a raging inferno. She actually forgot. Without that hateful little dragon, Su Luo still had a weird plant pet. Fine. Then we'll wait and see. See how you will pass these 3 days. Li Yaoyao's face was black and dropped down some fierce words. 2 days' time hurriedly passed. These 2 days, Li Yaoyao basically didn't bring Su Luo a drop of water. let alone to mention food. Li Yaoyao was clearly mistreating Su Luo, not giving her anything to eat or drink. Her goal was very simple. She wanted Su Luo to be starving and thirsty until she couldn't stand it. Then, kneel in front of her to admit defeat. In fact, Li Yaoyao was sitting on a chair not far from the iron cage. On her right was a small table arranged with all kinds of food. The her right now had a leg crossed over gracefully and was happily enjoying the fine food. Li Yaoyao herself was also an apothecary, even though the wounds on her body on that day seemed serious, but after cultivating and medical treatment, very quickly, it was healed. As for Su Luo, she was still sitting in the iron cage with a blank expression. Li Yaoyao deliberately chose delicious food that gave off fragrant smells. Moreover, she intentionally added Jade Lakesley family's most precious celestial spirit water inside the delicious food. Momentarily, the aroma permeated the air, making a person's mouth salivate. Li Yaoyao leisurely enjoyed the food, but in fact, her attention was not on the fragrant food. Rather, it was on Su Luo's body. All of her preparations was for Su Luo to let go of her dignity to beg her. However, what made her depressed was that Su Luo, this little slut, was really strong-willed. 2 full days, sitting there with a blank expression, motionless. Not mentioning food, she didn't even drink a mouthful of water. Want to eat? Li Yaoyao self-satisfiedly lifted up a piece of steak that had black pepper on it in a provoking manner, waving it in front of Su Luo. Su Luo didn't even lift up her eyelids, still in the state of staring blankly. Yesterday, in the middle of the night, taking advantage of Li Yaoyao being asleep, she had already eaten the rations she stored in her space, and now, she wasn't a bit hungry. Chapter 883, Fairy Yin Xia, 15. Want to drink some water? Li Yaoyao swayed the water kettle that she had added 3 drops of celestial spirit water to. This 3 drops of celestial spirit water simply made her flesh hurt. Su Luo's eyelids still did not lift up as before, and continued in the state of staring blankly. Added 3 drops of low-grade celestial spirit water to contaminate the water quality. Who would want to drink it? She had always directly poured out high-grade celestial spirit water. Okay? Li Yaoyao suddenly had no more tricks. Humph. Su Luo, don't forget. You only have 1 day to live. Next year's tomorrow will be the anniversary of your death. Li Yaoyao, seeing her stratagem didn't work, directly became hostile. Su Luo still felt disinclined to pay any damned attention to her. But that green vine in her sleeves slowly crawled out. From the corner of Li Yaoyao's eyes, she saw that green vine, and unconsciously, she jumped away. The so-called once-bitten, twice-shy. Now, Li Yaoyao was really very afraid of this green vine. Good. Since you yourself want to be a starving ghost, then, become one. Don't appreciate the good intentions of people. Li Yaoyao coldly humped a few times, and saw that green vine become restless again. Finally, she icily glared at Su Luo, then turned and returned to her original position. Seeing Li Yaoyao leaving, then Su Luo faintly sighed. She still remembered the first time she saw Li Yaoyao. That was what kind of immortal fairy-like aura? Dressed in white that was purer than snow. Exquisite without being touched by dirt. Appearing like a fairy that was above the common people. As if just glancing at her was blasphemy. But the her right now gave off a strong aura of smoke and fire. Su Luo slowly sighed again. It had already been 2 days. Because she had collected the red acacia seeds, moreover, it was variant red acacia seeds. As a result, Su Luo started to attack the rank of an advanced apothecary. Because Su Luo's soul had entered her space, therefore, from Li Yaoyao's point of view, if Su Luo wasn't staring blankly, then she was sleeping. Through 2 days of practice in unbroken succession. When Li Yaoyao disturbed Su Luo had just so happened to be promoted to the ranks of advanced apothecary. Because of Su Luo's equipment and body's special nature, when she just got promoted to advanced apothecary, her strength was already equivalent to the rank of someone at the summit of advanced apothecary. As a result, Su Luo started to prepare to refine the concentration restoration pills. A very coincidental matter was that the most precious herb in the concentration restoration pills was luo grass. Luo grass was divided based on years. 10 years, 100 years, 10,000 years. Naturally, the older it was, the better the effect of the medicine would be. The luo grass in Su Luo's hand dug out by the little divine dragon was at least several thousand years old. The medicinal effect would be very good. Su Luo only grabbed some meaty leaves of the luo grass and used it as a main ingredient, placed them into the medicinal cauldron. After approximately 2 hours had passed, Su Luo's first time refining concentration restoration pills, and she actually directly succeeded. Good, very good. Su Luo was simply pleased beyond her own expectations. Tomorrow was the last day, then today, she must escape. Su Luo secretly boosted her own morale in her heart. If she remained behind, it was definitely a dead end. If she escaped, there was still a thread of hope. Night, gradually, it darkened. Because these few days, Su Luo had always behaved very calmly. Therefore, Li Yaoyao's guard against her had dropped to the lowest point. The darkest moment before dawn. At this moment, it was the darkest time in the world. Also, the moment when people slept the deepest. Previous life, Su Luo was used to going out to kill people at this time. That was a 100% success. Never had she failed. Today, this moment had finally came. Su Luo's hand held a pipe of sleeping smoke and blew in the direction where Li Yaoyao was. Because she had already made preparations to escape, so Su Luo had already searched once through her space, and finally found that huge box of medicine that senior brother had given her from before. Chapter 884, Fairy Yin Xia, 16, Inside, was a very easy-to-use sleeping smoke. Just remember that at that time, this was the pipe with sleeping smoke that thoroughly defeated Su Wan. Now, Su Luo again used this sleeping smoke on a similar person's body, Li Yaoyao, that annoyed her. Li Yaoyao was lying on the chair made of red sandalwood, in deep sleep. After probing a few times with no result, only now did Su Luo release a breath. She rubbed away the cold sweat on her forehead. She had already resolved the person guarding her. The most important thing right now was to walk out of this iron cage. Before, Fairy Yin Xia, with a wave of her hand, was able to open the mechanism. And another wave of her hand, the mechanism closed. This ability was indeed amazing. But, since she dared to show off like this in front of others, proved that she had a lot of confidence in the early warning system in here. Su Luo's mouth hooked into a cold smile. When fleeing, the first step many people do would be to think of any means to open the prison's door. However, these prison doors, with regards to Su Luo right now, she completely didn't have any problems with. One could only see Su Luo cover herself with nothingness of space. Afterwards, her body, step by step, walked slowly towards the iron pillar. One could only see her body, in a split second, seemed transparent, as if walking through the wall. Very quickly, her body appeared outside of the iron cage. And in the entire hall, besides Su Luo herself, she couldn't sense another person. Su Luo softly and quietly walked outside. When passing by Li Yaoyao's body, with a whoosh sound, she took out a dagger. Li Yaoyao and hers enmity was tied up very deeply. It was a state of, if you die then I would live. This lifetime, there was no possibility of reconciling. That deeply cold dagger was pressed onto Li Yaoyao's slender, white and soft neck. In Su Luo's mind, her imagination started to roam. In the end, should she kill Li Yaoyao or not? If she killed her, then the death would end all her troubles. Only, this time, her escape, she would be set as the murderer. If she didn't kill her, could it be that she still needed to watch her as she strut around? Therefore, for a moment, Su Luo was very tangled. Just at this moment, the calls of the little divine dragon sounded in her head. Su Luo's eyes narrowed slightly in a flash. She retrieved the dagger, clenched her teeth and coldly humphed. Forget it, this time. I'll spare your life, next time. It won't be so easy. Li Yaoyao's background was really somewhat huge. If she could, Su Luo would choose to assassinate and secretly kill her. and not leave behind any evidence that she was the murderer. To say nothing of Su Luo still wanting to openly and uprightly defeat Li Yaoyao in front of everyone on the stage of the fighting competition. One hand forming a knife hacked down, and Li Yaoyao once again sank into deep sleep. Su Luo softly and quietly stepped on the spiral staircase and walked up. Above the flight of stairs was a stone door. There wasn't a lock on the stone door. With one push, Su Luo was able to push it open. Now, Su Luo's first step was to find the little divine dragon. Just now, the little divine dragon had already passed on a message to her, telling her that right now, Fairy Yin Xia sat cross-legged and was right in the middle of cultivating. This time, going in to carry him out was the best and most suitable opportunity. This opportunity was fleeting. To have another chance would be difficult. Therefore, Su Luo, with rapt attention, held her breath, and with both hands, nimbly opened the stone door. Outside of the stone door was a long corridor. In the front and back was the same continuous length, so long that she practically couldn't see the end. However, because Su Luo and the little divine dragon had signed an equal contract, therefore now, a map appeared in Su Luo's mind. And the little divine dragon was the continuously flickering little black on the map. Su Luo originally thought that this palace built beneath the water wasn't that great. But when she was really walking within its corridors, she was able to see how lavish and gorgeous it was inside. According to the information the little divine dragon fed her, Fairy Yin Xia's sleeping residence was at the very middle of this palace. Now, it was the dead of the night. Chapter 885. Cooking Su Luo in Warm Water 1. This was the time when humans were most fatigued. So, Su Luo walked the entire journey without any obstruction and didn't see a single person's shadow. All of a sudden, on this very long corridor, a person's shadow headed directly towards Su Luo. Front, back, left, and right were all walls. Su Luo couldn't avoid nor hide. Su Luo, in a flash, pressed against the wall. With the help of the light and shadows, she hid her own figure. She lowered the feeling of her presence to the lowest. Su Luo, through the dim light, her eyes narrowed into a line, and watched that graceful, slim figure slowly approach. In the palace under the lake, the people Su Luo recognized wasn't many. When all was said and done, it was only Fairy Yin Xia and Li Yaoyao who were the two people she knew. But the person in front of her, Su Luo had the karma to have seen once before. This person wasn't a stranger. It was the maid that followed along the old witch into the stone prison from before. This maid's cultivation clearly wasn't very high, therefore, only when she was very close did she sense something was different. However, no sooner said than done. Su Luo had already condensed out the great dimensional imprint above this miss's head. Just when she opened both eyes wide in surprise, the light in Su Luo's eyes flashed, and the great dimensional imprint immediately smashed down. A soft hitting noise. This gorgeous maid's head was momentarily smashed dizzy, both eyes forming the shape of a hypnotic spiral. Afterwards, her body slowly started to fall down. If she fell to the ground, certainly, the sound of hitting the ground would be produced. Therefore, without waiting for her to fall to the ground, Su Luo's long arm had reached out and was already supporting her soft figure. However, just at this moment, an icily cold dagger suddenly stabbed towards Su Luo's chest. This maid was actually not smashed dizzy, because she wanted to assassinate Su Luo, so she didn't scream out loud. Now, the two people were very close together. Su Luo's right hand was supporting her. As a result, she exposed the position of her chest. The dagger was like an ice-cold, fierce viper, directly stabbing towards Su Luo's heart. This dagger was elite and accurate, not a bit sloppy, was an absolute consummated skill of this maid that would kill. Such a close distance. On top of that, she was completely unguarded. Practically the majority of the people wouldn't be able to escape this assassination. But just when the maid's dagger was about a finger's width from Su Luo's heart, that dagger was halted momentarily, just fixed in place like that in the air. The maid didn't believe it. Abruptly, she increased her power again. However, that dagger still didn't move the slightest bit. In the end, what was the matter? Could there still be a ghost? Just when the maid was puzzled, a dagger appeared from Su Luo's sleeves, quick and accurately cutting towards the maid's throat. Originally, Su Luo was also more restrained. This flower-like young girl, she had no intention to kill. However, since she made the move that was very fierce and ruthless, then don't blame Su Luo for being impolite. A line of blood burst out. This maid's pair of eyes was opened wide until they were perfectly round. Her heart was unwilling as she stared at Su Luo. She mounted a sneak attack on someone else, but was killed by the opponent. The corner of Su Luo's mouth hooked into a taunting, cold smile. You had greatly overestimated yourself. If this maid had shouted loudly immediately after it happened, and not showed off to come and assassinate Su Luo, then Su Luo would have been inconvenienced. The maid slowly closed her eyes. Su Luo shook her head. Due to her instincts as an assassin, she instinctively resisted the nearness of a stranger. Therefore, she was already guarded against this maid. So, she had already covered her body with nothingness of space as defense since earlier. After placing the maid's body in a shadowy corner, then, she carefully thought some more. This was the old witch's personally made. A moment ago, she was holding a cup of liquid soup. Seeing that tray made of redwood that was placed on the ground, Su Luo urgently communicated with the little divine dragon again. Very quickly, the corner of Su Luo's mouth hooked up into an enigmatic smile. Chapter 886. Cooking Su Luo in Warm Water. 2. Very quickly, Su Luo's body, graceful as a leopard cat, went towards the old witch's resting residence. There wasn't anyone guarding the resting residence's gate. The gate was closed, but with one push, she could enter. At this time, Su Luo was wearing that maid's clothes. Her figure was about the same as that maid's. Looking from the back, there was hardly any difference between the two people. Holding a tray in her hands, Su Luo gently and gracefully stepped inside. Sure enough, as the little divine dragon had said, the old witch had already finished cultivating and now was already lying on a soft couch, resting with her eyes closed. At her side was a low table for putting down a tea set. Su Luo carried the tray, impersonating that maid. Because previously, Su Luo had already carefully paid attention to that maid's walking pace, therefore, now that she was imitating it, it wasn't really that difficult. Su Luo walked in carrying the tray. Her eyes looked in all directions, and her ears listened for everything. Very quickly, she saw the little divine dragon hanging in the middle of the hall like a bird in a cage. The little divine dragon, upon seeing his owner, was emotionally excited and ran around in circles inside the round ball of light. Moreover, he also excitedly slapped the ball of light's wall. His movements almost gave Su Luo a huge fright. Now, that old witch was within 10 meters in front of her. As long as she opened her eyes, she would be able to see Su Luo. However, fortunately, the old witch merely frowned slightly but did not open her eyes. She heard the maid come in and humphed softly in an indifferent manner. Put down the stuff. Also, carry this annoying little thing out. Su Luo, having heard that, her heart immediately became exalted. Just now, she was still worrying about how to secretly take the little divine dragon away. Now, the old witch's command was simply like when you're dozing off and someone gives you a pillow. It was simply great. Su Luo placed the redwood tray down, fetched that bowl of beautification soup, and placed it on the low table. At this time, the distance between the old witch and her was only half an arm's length. Want to ask if Su Luo's heart was nervous at this time? Naturally, she was nervous, but this kind of nervousness also had a trace of excitement, similar to the feeling of wandering on the brink of life and death from her previous life. Su Luo faintly inhaled a breath, clenching her fist tightly. Just when she was about to go lift the little divine dragon down, Fairy Yin Xia suddenly opened her eyes. Su Luo's heart immediately dropped to the floor. In a split second, she held her breath. She subconsciously turned her body around, using her back to face Fairy Yin Xia, pretending that she was busy. But Su Luo could clearly hear the sound coming from her chest. Ba thump, ba thump, ba thump. The fierce and clear heartbeat sounds, just like Su Luo's nervous mood at this time. Fortunately, Fairy Yin Xia merely opened her eyes slightly, and then she shut them once more. She had a lot of confidence in her tin-sided cage. Even if it was a 9th-ranked strong expert who wanted to think of a way out of her tin-sided cage, it was unlikely, let alone Su Luo, as an insignificant 5th rank. So, she simply could not have imagined that Su Luo would escape from the tin-sided cage. Moreover, that she would even be reckless enough to come to her side. Furthermore, at this time, Su Luo had already used nothingness of space to envelop herself. That strong smell of the medicinal juice on her face was isolated by nothingness of space. Otherwise, no matter how she faked acting like that maid, merely by this scent, she would have been recognized. Su Luo saw Fairy Yin Xia once again shut her eyes and sink back into deep sleep. Her body that was stretched taut. Only now did it relax somewhat. Su Luo stopped in place and once again observed Fairy Yin Xia for a short period. Seeing that she really didn't open her eyes again, only then did she slowly heave a sigh of relief. She took graceful steps to walk towards the little divine dragon. The little divine dragon, seeing Su Luo coming over, his 2 little paws leaned forward against the wall of the ball of light. That pair of distinctly large, clear, and monochrome eyes was brimming with emotional tears. This kind of scene gave Su Luo a feeling like she was visiting a prisoner. Chapter 887, Cooking Su Luo in Warm Water, 3. She picked up the ball of white light and lowered her head to look at the little divine dragon inside who was jumping around with joy. For a moment, she had a kind of feeling like she was taking a bird for a stroll. Su Luo was speechless, the corner of her mouth parting slightly. However, right now, the most important thing was to hurriedly run away. Seeing that she had completed her objective, Su Luo turned around and was about to slip away. However, before she had taken a few steps, Fairy Yin Xia's ice-cold voice once again came from behind her. Go to the dungeon and have a look. Don't let that girl kill herself. Having heard what was said, Su Luo immediately looked skywards and rolled her eyes. She, Su Luo, no matter how she died, but there was absolutely no way she would die by committing suicide. But it was also because of these words that Su Luo became aware that when the sun rose tomorrow, her miserable days would begin immediately afterwards. Place the pill on the table in the medicine chest. Fairy Yin Xia coldly instructed with her eyes closed.
Yes.
Su Luo imitated that maid's tone and very cautiously responded with a word. Afterwards, she turned around and walked towards the table. As expected, she saw a pill collected inside a very small brocade case. However, what sort of pill this was, Fairy Yin Xia did not say. Su Luo, naturally, also had no good way to ask. However, where was the medicine chest? Holding the small brocade case, Su Luo looked all around, but could not find the medicine chest position. Okay, since she couldn't find the medicine chest, then she'd first temporarily store it inside her space. Since she decided to slip away, this kind of small advantages, Su Luo naturally would not refuse. Consequently, she, as if rightfully so, threw the little divine dragon and that pill both into her space. Afterwards, she intended to leave stealthily. The medicine chest is located at the headboard of the bed. Where are you going? Why haven't you hurry it up and put it in? Dilly-dallying, do you want to die? Just when Su Luo was about to slip away, Fairy Yin Xia's displeased tone came from the soft couch area. Fairy Yin Xia was very violent. A wave of murderous spirit aura gushed out. Yes, Su Luo was tangled and helplessly grabbed her head. This old witch was really long-winded. As she was about to slip away, but over and over again, she was made to stay behind. How would she know where the headboard was? Su Luo really wanted to run and be on her way because it was really dangerous here. Once Yin Xia, this old witch, opened her eyes, she would discover that Su Luo was a fake. When that time came, even if she wanted to run, she wouldn't be able to run. Headboard, headboard. Su Luo lifted up her eyes to look in all directions. The old witch's resting residence was really huge. It was as much as 405 square meters of space. She searched for a long time before finding that huge, charming, and gentle bed. on the inner side of the large bed, near the edge of the wall. Sure enough, there was a silvery white-colored medicine chest. The medicine chest, the thing that she, Fairy Yin Xia, regarded as important, certainly wouldn't be lacking. Maybe there were treasures inside. Su Luo opened it and had a look. Inside, apart from 3 or 4 brocade cases like the one in her hand, were medicinal herbs that were kept cold inside an ice jade case. Among these were 3 kinds of medicinal herbs that she recognized from beautiful teacher's instructions. Those were definitely good stuff. Good things? Forget it. Good things certainly all belonged to her to have. This was the so-called having seen it. She had a share of it. Su Luo covertly turned her head around and discovered that Fairy Yin Xia's eyes were still closed, as if she had already fallen asleep. Su Luo was not even a little bit reserved. She softly and quietly took these several kinds of treasures made from heavenly material all into her possessions. Apart from these medicinal herbs, Su Luo unexpectedly also found 2 spirit pinballs. Su Luo's eyes momentarily gave off a light, and the corner of her mouth hooked into a having prevailed smile. Humph, humph. The old witch made her face like this. Don't even know if it was possible to get it off in the future. Now that she stole away the old witch's things, could also be considered as getting rid of some of the hate. Consequently, Su Luo pretended to place the small brocade case into the medicine chest. Afterwards, she pretended to place the medicine chest back to its original spot. Chapter 888, Cooking Su Luo in Warm Water, 4. She deliberately made a tiny sound just to tell Fairy Yin Xia that this young woman, I, was handling matters according to your commands. However, after Su Luo arranged the medicine chest back to its original position, the corner of her mouth hooked into a self-satisfied smile. Because her hand was pressing down on the medicine chest, in the next second, the entire medicine chest entered into Su Luo's space. The place where it had been was completely empty, with nothing there at all. Right now, Su Luo, who had completed her mission and reaped an unexpected bonus, her mood was really good. She cast a glance at Fairy Yin Xia, who was lying on the soft couch with eyes closed as if fast asleep. Afterwards, she turned around and left. When she passed by in front of Fairy Yin Xia, Su Luo's heart rose up to her throat. If at this time, Fairy Yin Xia opened her eyes, she would definitely be able to see Su Luo head-on. At this time, she could not panic, nor get anxious. Su Luo kept her heartbeat at a normal level, her footsteps also maintaining the previous standard. Step by step, she walked towards the door. Such a short distance. Walking it, Su Luo's brow was beaded with sweat. It was very hair-raising to her. However, up until Su Luo went out through the resting residence's doorway, Fairy Yin Xia still did not open her eyes. It was truly a great fortune in the midst of misfortune, until she left the resting residence and stood outside the door. Only then did Su Luo slowly breathe out in relief. Only after she came out, did a touch of lingering fear slowly appear inside Su Luo's heart. Her actions just now was like snatching food from a tiger mouth. It was extremely dangerous. However, luckily, the mission was completed and got an unexpected bonus. Su Luo's mood became really good. However, when she touched her own face, her mood immediately fell back down again. Right now, who knows what thing was painted on her face? It was just like a black mud facial mask. If she could wash it off like a facial mask, it would be good. If she couldn't wash it off, Su Luo gloomily patted her head, deciding to leave this place first, then deal with it. This place outside of the resting residence was very big. Because Su Luo didn't have the map for this place, so she could only depend on her own pair of legs. She went all around the entire the palace, up and down, inside and out, east, west, south and north. She'd already searched in all 4 directions. However, what made her collapse was that there wasn't even a way out. This Qin palace seemed to have been constructed in the shape of a sphere. Standing in the courtyard, Su Luo was able to see the fishes, shrimps, and other sea creatures swimming past and frolicking outside in the ocean. However, her extended hand could not reach outside. There seemed to be a kind of invisible force in all directions that separated the lake water, to the extent that she could see but couldn't go out. What to do? Watching the fishes and shrimps swimming freely past her eyes, Su Luo's heart was somewhat fretful. Before her eyes was the place of the sturdy boundary. What should she do to open it? Don't know if using spirit force would work. Su Luo considered it carefully for a long time. She still decided to use spirit force to give it a try. One could only see Su Luo with both eyes tightly closed, her hand turning over in a complicated manner, producing complex hand seals one after another. Finally, the hand seals converged into a ball of light. In a flash, it attacked toward the front. The ball of light immediately charged towards the sturdy boundary. Su Luo's eyes revealed a smiling expression. However, in the next moment, she was unable to smile. Su Luo never expected that ball of light would actually bounce back. That ball of light smashed against the sturdy boundary, and just like a tennis ball, bounced back from hitting the net. It actually bounced back in a straight line. She had never heard that a ball of light that was smashed out would bounce back. Su Luo's complexion immediately changed fast. She subconsciously dodged it. Boom! A loud sound rang out. The ball of light smashed directly towards the floor and let out a violent bursting sound of explosion. Su Luo secretly said in her heart, "Oh no, in this quiet dead of the night, such a loud and clear sound. How could it not startle people?" Su Luo turned in the opposite direction. How would she dare to still delay? Immediately, she turned around to run. In the distance, she saw Fairy Yin Xia's room door open, her shadowy figure coming out in a flash. Chapter 889. Cooking Su Luo in Warm Water. 5. Run, run, run. Su Luo did not know where she ought to go to hide. All of a sudden, a light flashed on in her mind. The most dangerous place was precisely the safest place. On her left-hand side was the dungeon. Su Luo suddenly rushed in. At this time, Li Yaoyao was still unconscious. Su Luo had no time to think it through and directly slapped Li Yaoyao awake. Then, she rapidly flew into the tin-sided cage. She had just finished arranging her posture properly when Fairy Yin Xia entered. Fairy Yin Xia's suspicious gaze swept over the surroundings. The dungeon appeared the same from when she left before. Su Luo, that black-faced girl, was still crouching inside the dungeon, having never left. Li Yaoyao was also guarding it with her eyes open. However, a raging inferno was ignited inside of Fairy Yin Xia's eyes. But her maid had actually been killed by someone. This still wasn't the most serious thing. The most serious matter was that her medicine chest was stolen by someone. The things inside, to her, was very, very important. Both of Fairy Yin Xia's hands were clenched firmly into fists, her face flickering between clear and gloom, in an indeterminate mood. How could Li Yaoyao still dare to stay seated? She had long since stood, bowed at the side. Fairy Yin Xia's angry gaze swept past Li Yaoyao. "You've always been here, guarding?" "Yes," Li Yaoyao nodded. "No one had come in?" Fairy Yin Xia frowned. She kept feeling like a problem had occurred somewhere, but as for the specifics, she couldn't say. That kind of feeling was very strange. No, Li Yaoyao felt there was some soreness on her face, like she'd been slapped by someone. But holding on to the principle that it was better to avoid unnecessary trouble, Li Yaoyao concealed it. Also, no one went out. Fairy Yin Xia's voice was cold and strict. While she was speaking, her gaze even shot towards Su Luo, who was sitting inside the cage. Su Luo, at this time, was leaning against a corner with both her arms around her knees, hugging them. Her head was resting on her kneecaps, drooping down gloomily from her shoulders. She appeared to be depressed and sad. Her face had been made to be like this. It's also no wonder she would be sorrowful. Only when Fairy Yin Xia looked at Su Luo, she kept feeling there was something wrong. A light flashed in the pupils of her eyes, and she pushed Li Yaoyao aside, walking forward with large strides. Within the time it took for her sleeve to flip over, the tin-sided cage had already opened. Su Luo lifted her head up from her knee. She slowly stood up, looking at Fairy Yin Xia with an ice-cold gaze. Fairy Yin Xia's eyebrows knitted slightly. This strong medicinal liquid smell was absolutely impossible to be mistaken. This dark-faced young woman before her eyes was absolutely Su Luo, without a doubt. However, just a moment ago, she had inspected it already. The force that touched the sturdy boundary was nothing more than a mere 5th or 6th rank. In the end, who was that person? Fairy Yin Xia thought until her head became big, but she still didn't have any ideas. Originally, the target she ought to suspect the most was Su Luo, but this girl had been trapped inside the 10-sided cage, completely unable to escape. So, she was the very first suspect to be eliminated. Could it be that someone knew Su Luo, this loathsome girl, was here, so they came to save her? The moment she thought of this possibility, Fairy Yin Xia's eyes exploded out with a cold light. Someone come, take Su Luo away. Fairy Yin Xia coldly commanded. Hearing this, Su Luo's heart shook. Suddenly, a bad kind of feeling appeared. Seeing this, Li Yaoyao rushed up voluntarily and tied both of Su Luo's hands behind her back. She deliberately made it very tight, and Su Luo immediately let out a cry of pain. However, Fairy Yin Xia didn't even sweep a single glance at Su Luo. Her voice was ice-cold, unshakable and iron-like. Take her down to the refining room. Fairy Yin Xia could not be certain if someone had come to save Su Luo. Aside from Rong Yun, she didn't care about other people. She had lost her treasures, and her heart was in a towering rage. For now, she was merely venting, that's all. Chapter 890. Cooking Su Luo in Warm Water. 6. Su Luo never thought that medicine box was so important to Fairy Yin Xia. She wished she could return to the cage, although she had successfully concealed the matter of her stealing the medicine box, but she had also delivered herself to Fairy Yin Xia. Thinking about this, Su Luo couldn't help but want to hold her forehead. What kind of situation was this? Now, this old witch was right in the middle of a fit of anger. Su Luo dared not provoke her. She could only let Li Yaoyao escort her to go to the refining room. Along the way, Su Luo's mind was unceasingly pondering on plans to escape. As long as she was away from the old witch's eyes, then the odds of her escaping were quite high. But the problem was, there was simply no way out of this underground palace. Forget about it, if they really forced her. Then she would smash the spirit pinball at them. Su Luo thought ruthlessly in her heart. The refining room was located at the westernmost part of the entire palace. The inside was close to 100 square meters in area. In the most central place of the room, a medicinal cauldron was set up. This medicinal cauldron was clearly supersized. Around the medicinal cauldron was a stone altar. On the stone altar, countless types of medicinal herbs that had been dried were arranged. Fairy Yin Xia, in an ice-cold manner, looked at Su Luo, then pointed to that medicinal cauldron and said, "Go in." Su Luo was momentarily shocked. She repeated the words, "Go in?" Fairy Yin Xia cast a sidelong glance at Su Luo. Her sleeve fluttered, and all the clothing on Su Luo's body was ripped apart. The completely naked Su Luo was directly sent into that supersized medicine cauldron by a gust of wind. "Old witch, you want to cook me thoroughly?" Su Luo, from the bottom of her heart, thought that the old witch was bringing her to the refining room for the sake of getting rid of the black medicinal liquid on her face. However, she never expected that she would actually cook her. With an endlessly cold indifference in Fairy Yin Xia's tone, she picked up a pile of medicinal herbs and threw them into the medicinal cauldron. Then, she picked up a bucket of medicinal liquid and directly poured it in. Soon after, she only coldly said, "This medicinal liquid can get rid of the black ink on your face, but only after your death." A very callous sentence. "Old witch, you will receive retribution. Don't think Master doesn't know. Based on his intelligence, he will definitely arrive at the right conclusion after pondering. At that time, you will be toast." Su Luo shouted and made a big fuss. "He will not kill me." Fairy Yin Xia sneered. "But he will never forgive you. He will hate you for a lifetime." Su Luo was so angry that she screamed bloody murder. "That would be best thing ever. Exactly what I'm looking for." Fairy Yin Xia remained unmoved. "In the end, what hatred do I have with you, that you would treat me like this. A person about to die should at least know why they die. You should at least tell me who does this face of mine resembles ah. Su Luo loudly yelled. Only at a time like this, taking advantage of when Yin Xia, this old witch, was feeling self-satisfied, was she able to ask for answers to secrets that she normally couldn't get an answer to. Sure enough, hearing these words from Su Luo, the fury on Yin Xia, this old witch's, face flourished even more. Those two eyes were penetrating like the sharp point of a sword. Fairy Yin Xia sneered. Did Rong Yun tell you nothing at all? Hee. Since he won't say, then let me tell you. There was a person. She was called Yin Hua. Yin Hua? A thread of astonishment flashed through Su Luo's eyes. Wasn't this the name of that dagger in her hand? Then, it was this Yin Hua who made Fairy Yin Xia so twisted with hatred and made Master yearn for her day and night? Su Luo paused and weakly asked, is she the woman in that portrait in Master's small study? However, these words of Su Luo were simply like poking a hornet's nest. What? He went as far as to hang that cheap woman's portrait in the small study? Repulsive. Hateful. Fairy Yin Xia's gaze was like an ignited inferno, and she coldly shot towards Su Luo. Now I have changed my mind. You want to die? Not so easy. Sure enough, it had provoked her. As long as she didn't kill her outright on the spot, she would have a chance to escape. At this moment, Su Luo was endlessly secretly happy in her heart. Chapter 891, Nearly Disfigured, 1. Although Fairy Yin Xia said she temporarily won't kill Su Luo, but she had no plans to let Su Luo go. She waved her sleeves, and a flame flew into the medicinal cauldron. In an instant, the flames spread out. Old witch, didn't you say you will let me go? Su Luo angrily shouted out loud. Dream on. This mother said that I won't kill you yet, but I never said I would let you go. Although Fairy Yin Xia was furious, but her mind was still very clear. Before her words had faded, Fairy Yin Xia extended her hand to press Su Luo's head down. Afterwards, she grabbed a cover made from an unknown material and covered the medicinal cauldron. Inside the cauldron, it was originally brightly lit, but instantly became dark. Loathsome girl, be content. The medicinal herbs inside this medicinal cauldron is hard to find. Even if I sold you, I wouldn't be able to buy a single stalk of the herbs. Now, you have the opportunity to absorb it. Fairy Yin Xia coldly snorted a few times. It's a pity that there is no red acacia seed inside. Otherwise, wouldn't you, this girl, directly be promoted to the level of advanced apothecary? Unfortunately, the medicinal cauldron was shut off, so Su Luo did not hear this. Under the medicinal cauldron, scarlet-red flames leapt about and spread. The scathing flames burned very fiercely, jumping about. The endless flowing flames were used underneath and did not enter into the medicinal cauldron. Fairy Yin Xia did not leave. Instead, she sat down on one side with her legs in lotus position. Her eyes closed and entered into a state of cultivation. At the same time, she also had the intention of guarding Su Luo, because she wanted to see Su Luo's appearance in the first instant. Now, inside the sealed medicinal cauldron, it was pitch black, and you couldn't see your own fingers in front of your face. The temperature inside rose continuously, and Su Luo sat in the center of the medicinal cauldron, naked. There was a lot of medicinal liquid, and it reached just below her collarbone. Along with the rise in temperature, the pitch black as ink medicinal juice gradually started to boil. Compared to water, the medicinal juice's boiling point was much higher. Simply impossible to imagine. Now, Su Luo only had one feeling, and that was pain. Stuffy, hot, and painful. The pain continuously battered her brain. Even though the temperature was high, but Su Luo was of the fire element system. Therefore, this temperature was still within the range Su Luo could endure. However, following the passing of time, the temperature inside the cauldron became higher and higher. Huge bubbles began to appear in the black as ink medicinal juice, making bubbling noises. In the beginning, Su Luo could still endure it. However, towards the end, her white as snow skin began to redden and become swollen. Su Luo's consciousness started to become fuzzy. That old witch wouldn't really want to boil her to death, right? Just when Su Luo was in a daze, she thought about the situation when she was on the barren hill on the isolated island. At that time, she was trapped inside the cave of flames. The temperature around her was frighteningly high then. She had entered for less than quarter of an hour before she fainted from the heat. At that time, what did she do? Su Luo's brain suddenly had a flash of inspiration. The stone. How could she have forgotten this servant that had earned great merit? As a result, Su Luo immediately extended her hands inside her space to fish it out. After fishing around for a long while, she finally found the stone hidden in a pile of weeds. Tisi, you only thought of this little grandpa now. Really useless. Little Sky arrogantly cast Su Luo a glance. His eyes were full of provocation. I simply wanted to test my own endurance, Su Luo said, without her heart jumping nor her face turning red. Su Luo placed this stone within the boiling medicinal liquid, and the effect very quickly appeared. The temperature inside the medicinal cauldron gradually lowered. In the end, it was like the water in a hot spring, neither cold nor hot, extremely comfortable. Immersed within this cozy temperature, Su Luo felt all the pores on her body loosen. Just at this moment, she felt her mind become unprecedentedly clear, free, and alert. Chapter 892, Nearly Disfigured, 2. Thus, Su Luo sat cross-legged, her eyes tightly closed. Her spirit had long ago entered into her space. In her space was the medicinal cauldron, medicinal herbs, and in addition, the red acacia seeds Su Luo had gathered previously. The medicinal herbs for the advanced apothecary's test were all already prepared. Very good. Su Luo took a deep breath. Didn't know when she would encounter such a great time with this kind of burst of inspiration. Therefore, Su Luo made a firm resolution to seize this good opportunity. In one move, to be promoted to advanced apothecary. Only after promoting to advanced apothecary level could she then make use of the primeval pill recipes she had inherited from Elder Zihua. Su Luo was inside the medical cauldron, and at this moment, she had also opened the medicinal cauldron in her space. Water caltrop, leafy grass, ancient wooden mushroom, as well as a moderately sized red acacia seed. In the beginning, she only put in these 4 herbal ingredients. The 4 herbal ingredients gave off 4 different herbal characteristics. Afterwards, they unceasingly condensed, mixing together. Su Luo kept watch on the side of the medicine cauldron, steadily staring at it. She placed both hands on the medicinal cauldron, her spirit force entering into the medicinal cauldron through her palms non-stop. She could thereby sense the change of the medicinal herbs inside. Very quickly, her hands moved slightly. Then, she put in another 3 medicinal herbs all at once. At the same time, there was a red acacia seed. Afterwards, Su Luo then once again continued to steadily stare while sensing the change of the herbal medicine inside the medicinal cauldron. In fact, there were already 8 herbal medicine inside, with 2 pairs that harmonized and 2 pairs that repelled each other. This period lasted for a very long time. Afterwards, she once again added 3 herbal ingredients, in the last red acacia seed. 9 herbal ingredients, in addition to the 3 red acacia seeds, were boiled and cooked inside the medicinal cauldron. Su Luo had both hands placed on the outside of the medicine cauldron, sensing the changes in the herbal medicine inside. At the same time, she had to unceasingly control the change in the intensity of the fire. When the 2 medicines with repelling characteristics were mixed, she needed to weaken the fire's intensity. At the time when the 2 medicines harmonized, she needed to increase the fire's intensity again. At this time, this tested a person's perception and sensitivity. In her space, it was 3 days and 3 nights. Su Luo continuously maintained this posture, sensing the temperature inside the medicinal cauldron and the change in the nature of the medicinal herbs. These 3 days and 3 nights, she didn't eat nor drink, standing there like a statue. Suddenly, her tightly closed eyes abruptly opened. The corner of her mouth slowly raised into a satisfied smile. It's done. As expected, when Su Luo lifted the medicinal cauldron's lid, a rich fragrance assaulted her senses. A spirit restoration pill, full of spirit power, quietly rested on the top part of the medicinal cauldron. That spirit restoration pill was the size of a pigeon's egg, round and plump. Just looking at it made you happy. Su Luo picked one up to carefully examine it, the smile at the corner of her mouth growing bigger. No mistake, this is an elite-level spirit restoration pill. Authentic? Su Luo smiled like a little fox. Originally, she thought it would still take quite a long time before she would be promoted to an advanced apothecary. She never expected that Yin Xia, that old witch, would seal her inside this medicinal cauldron. However, it gave her the opportunity to be promoted to an advanced apothecary. Of course, this was also thanks to the 3 variant red acacia seeds. Since she had already succeeded in refining it, Su Luo quickly left her space and returned to her body. Inside her space, 3 days and 3 nights had passed, but only less than an hour had passed in the outside world. At this moment, because the heat inside the medicinal cauldron was absorbed by that stone, as a result, the water temperature was very comfortable. Su Luo was just about to rest properly and relieve her tiredness, when all of a sudden, she saw the lid of the medicinal cauldron suddenly open. Could it be that the old witch was planning to let her out? Merely, the thought was very plump, but reality was extremely skinny. This was absolutely impossible. Just like when Su Luo refined medicine, Fairy Yin Xia also needed to sense things inside. Chapter 893, Nearly Disfigured, 3. She needed to know the situation inside the medicinal cauldron. However, what astonished her was that, when she had bumped the medicinal cauldron, she could feel that the temperature inside was gentler than the spring sun. How could this be? As a result, Fairy Yin Xia directly lifted open the lid of the medicinal cauldron. What the hell did you do? Fairy Yin Xia glared at Su Luo with displeasure. However, at this moment, Su Luo naturally had thrown the stone into her space, so as to destroy the corpse and remove all traces. What? Su Luo pretended to be bewildered, a condition as if she completely did not understand what had happened. Fairy Yin Xia disdainfully looked at the black ink-like stuff on her face and coldly warned, "I warn you, don't play any tricks, because it would be of no benefit you." "I don't understand what you are saying," Su Luo unhurriedly said. In any case, she had the stone in hand. No matter how Fairy Yin Xia tried to cook her, she would never be able to burn her to death. Loathsome girl. All these herbal ingredients are extremely hard to find in hundreds of years. You absolutely would not be able to gather them. So, if you wasted these herbal ingredients, then the medicinal juice on your face will never come off. Fairy Yin Xia coldly threatened. She glared at Su Luo. Of course, your master could find these herbal ingredients. However, let me tell you, the medicinal juice on your face will expire after 3 days. If it is not removed within 3 days, then you'll just have to wait for your face to rot away. What? There was really such a thing? Su Luo's heart was greatly surprised. Are you just scaring me? Su Luo stared unblinkingly at Fairy Yin Xia, trying to find any peculiarities on her face. However, Fairy Yin Xia coldly smiled. Scare you? What for? Su Luo glared at Fairy Yin Xia. She was able to determine that what she said was true. If she did not remove the medicinal juice on her face after 3 days, then, just thinking that there was a chance of being disfigured, Su Luo immediately felt anxious. Old witch, you didn't say this before. Su Luo's hands that were underwater clenched into fists. What's the difference if I told you or not? Fairy Yin Xia disdainfully shot Su Luo a sideways glance. Even if I said it earlier, did you have any way to oppose me? Fairy Yin Xia's infuriating appearance, just looking at it annoyed Su Luo. She wished she could smash her fists over. In this world that respected strong experts, only iron fists counted as reason. Su Luo's determination to become strong grew even more intense. In the end, Fairy Yin Xia's cold gaze glared at Su Luo, an icy intent in the depth of her eyes. Just you try to play any tricks. Fairy Yin Xia very fiercely glared at Su Luo. With a bang sound, she once again closed the lid. In the bottom of the medicinal cauldron, the burning hot flame increased by several folds. Su Luo, who originally thought she had victory within grasp, stared waveringly at the stone inside her space. If what the old witch said was true, then what she said was true. Little Sky inside the stone seemed to have guessed at Su Luo's thoughts, so he coldly said a sentence. Then why didn't you tell me earlier? Su Luo asked with lingering fears in her heart. Just a bit more and her face would really be ruined. Only when your face becomes ugly will you concentrate on cultivating. What's so bad about that? Little Sky vaguely muttered. What did you say? Su Luo couldn't hear it clearly. If she had heard clearly what Little Sky said, then the pitiful Little Sky would suffer a calamity. Little Sky seemed to detect that these words would piss off Su Luo. Therefore, he shrank back his head, pretending to be dead. Fairy Yin Xia clearly was very angry. She couldn't figure out what kind of tricks Su Luo was playing at. However, Su Luo's little actions had clearly offended her. As a result, in a fit of temper, Fairy Yin Xia fanned her sleeves, and with a swoosh sound, numerous flames spread in an instant. Chapter 894, Unexpected Happy Surprise. 1. Very quickly, the temperature inside the medicinal cauldron suddenly increased, and it kept going higher and higher. At this moment, Su Luo's heart was very tangled. She clearly had the small stone and could avoid the flames, but because she was worried about her face, she could not bring it out. The black ink-like medicinal juice started to bubble, continuously boiling. Su Luo's forehead was filled with beads of sweat that continued to roll down. Her entire face seemed to be drenched by water. The bean-sized droplets of sweat converged together and flowed down. Even though her consciousness gradually became fuzzy, Su Luo still gritted her teeth and forced herself to endure it. Just at this moment, Su Luo suddenly felt a strange change. A faint warm air slowly rose from her pubic region. Afterwards, a thin thread flowed throughout all the meridians in her body. Su Luo suddenly stared blankly. Afterwards, she was stumped for words, ecstatic. If she did not guess wrong, this was the rhythm of being promoted. Before, she was promoted to the summit of the 5th rank in the Black Forest. However, she was unable to find a good opportunity. Now, was she finally going to be promoted? Su Luo's eyes changed into a curved line in excitement. In the next moment, her eyes were closed tightly. She emptied her mind of distracting thoughts. She softly recited the chant her master taught her, and very quickly entered the state of deep cultivation. The surrounding black ink-like medicinal juice bubbled and surged. The burning heat continuously pierced her nerves with pain. However, at this moment, Su Luo was completely immersed in the excitement of breaking through. So, she had almost forgotten all the pain in her body. However, wanting to be promoted was easier said than done. Suddenly, Su Luo's face showed a painful expression. The air slowly moving around in her body suddenly seemed to become a flood and was very fierce. Su Luo's 4 limbs, with hundreds of bones, continuously convulsed. Her hands and feet were rigid like chunks of iron. Her body temperature continuously dropped while the temperature outside continued to increase uncontrollably. Turning hot, then cold, her body was extremely unbalanced, which was a sign for the recoil of madness state. At this moment, Su Luo only felt that her whole head was dizzy, so painful as if it was about to explode. She knew that if she allowed this state to continue, then she very likely would enter recoil of madness. She didn't want to become deranged. Su Luo gritted her teeth and continuously reminded herself that she must endure. Endure. Opportunity only knocks once. Let alone to say that if she didn't break through, then she would be burned to death inside here. Su Luo clenched her hands into fists and used her spirit energy to appease the air that was flowing through her 4 limbs and hundreds of bones like a fierce raging bull. Only, from Su Luo's violently shuddering body and the painful expression on her face, clearly, there was little effect. What to do? Inside the space, the little divine dragon felt Su Luo's pain. He clenched his paws tightly. That pair of always innocent, clean, transparent, clear as glass, huge and limpid eyes now was scarlet red. He wanted to go out to help Su Luo, but now, he was sealed in a ball of light. No matter how he climbed, he couldn't get out. The little divine dragon continuously used his head to hit the walls of the ball, but that wall was like rubber, very elastic. No matter what, he could not come out. Awoo, awoo, awoo. The little divine dragon was extremely angry. So noisy. An impatient tone came from inside the small stone. The little divine dragon's attention was immediately attracted to it. He raised his head. His eyes became extremely bright from meeting his enemy. However, now was clearly not the time for internal strife. One could see Little Sky lazily tossed a glance at the little divine dragon and faintly said, "What are you staring blankly for? Quickly come hit against me." The little divine dragon right now didn't have the time to pay attention to him and continued to scratch at the wall of the ball of light frantically. Chapter 895, Unexpected Happy Surprise 2. I told you what to do, you wouldn't listen. And after you heard it, you don't know how to do it. You tell me, aren't you an idiot? Little Sky looked down on him. I'm not stupid. The little divine dragon glared. Then come knock against me. Even idiots know how to do it. Inside the stone, Little Sky had both hands behind his head as a pillow, with one leg folded over the other. He laid on the raging flames and said lazily. Little Sky could not control the stone, so he could only get the little divine dragon to control the ball of light to hit the stone. The little divine dragon, half believing and half doubting, looked at him. He wrinkled his brows and tilted his head to think. I think that when your melon head understands what I said, humph humph, she would have already been burned to death. Little Sky used some fierce words as medicine. Awoo, awoo. The little divine dragon made a fist and angrily glared at Little Sky. At the same time, the little divine dragon inside the ball of light readily stepped on the ball of light and controlled the sphere to slowly roll towards Little Sky. Originally, the little divine dragon still did not understand. What capabilities did this lousy stone have to release him? However, the moment the ball of light touched the little stone, a scarlet red light suddenly shot towards the ball of light immediately. The ball of light exploded, instantly giving off a mushroom cloud of flames. The blaze sword. The ball of light that had trapped the little divine dragon was actually directly burned to ashes, only leaving behind the little divine dragon, whose entire body was black from being burnt, like coal. The little divine dragon's clear monochrome eyes were opened really wide, and momentarily, he was stupefied. Isn't this all right now? Really stupid. Little Sky disdainfully rolled his eyes towards the little divine dragon. Before, this repulsive little dragon had urinated on his body, and he still kept it in mind. So this time, he intentionally burned the little divine dragon's skin. The little divine dragon shouted, "Awoo, awoo, awoo," in succession. He wanted to directly charge out. However, Little Sky leisurely stopped him. If you want to save her, then open that medicine chest. The little divine dragon stopped and doubtfully glanced back at Little Sky. It's merely to open the medicine chest. Even idiots know how to do it. Little Sky once again added a psychologically attack. Awoo, 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 I'm not an idiot. The little divine dragon glared. If you're not an idiot, then open it. The longer you delay, the more danger that loathsome girl will face. Little Sky unhurriedly said. Awoo, 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 if even idiots can do it, then why can't you do it? The little divine dragon suspiciously looked at the opposite party. The originally calm and composed Little Sky, who wanted to show off, never imagined that this natural airhead, little, repulsive dragon would actually one-up him. Immediately, he was choked off. Little Sky blushed in embarrassment and suddenly turned over to sit up. He flew into a rage from embarrassment. Do you want to save that loathsome girl or not? Awoo, awoo, awoo. I wanna. The little divine dragon fiercely nodded. Open that medicine chest. Little Sky humphed twice. If it was not for the fact that they were on the same boat, he would never meddle in other people's business. Little Sky arrogantly turned his face away. The medicine chest had a secret button. For a moment, the little divine dragon couldn't find it. Being anxious, he smashed a fist towards it, and suddenly, A hole appeared on top of it. Spendthrift, Little Sky gnashed his teeth and sighed. The little divine dragon, by no means, was a spendthrift. He carried the medicine chest and placed it in front of the small stone. First, throw in that red one. Although Little Sky was still as arrogant as before, his expression was a little more serious and solemn than before. Little Sky moved his mouth, and the little divine dragon moved his paws. These two coordinated flawlessly together. This medicine chest was stolen by Su Luo from that old witch Yin Xia. Inside were extremely rare divine medicinal herbs. A total of 4 stalks of herb, every stalk was chilled inside the white jade icebox. The little divine dragon used his paws to fetch the red one, and according to Little Sky's words, he threw it outside of Su Luo's space. If Apothecary Long saw the little divine dragon's actions, he would absolutely blow his top from heartache. Chapter 896, Unexpected Happy Surprise 3, because this was the red 7-leafed night grass. It only had 7 leaves, and could said to be one of the 7 divine herbs, exceptionally rare. Even such a great expert like Fairy Yin Xia, wanting to get his herb, then she still had to get really lucky. The most important point was that you only needed to put in 1 leaf. But this spendthrift of a little divine dragon was really a spendthrift. He actually threw the whole plan in. At this time, sealed away in a medicinal cauldron, Su Luo's entire body was in incomparable pain. Her body was cold as ice, but the outside was boiling hot. One cold, one hot, unable to mix together no matter what. Su Luo clenched her teeth and her fists. The veins were bursting all over her body. That red 7-leafed nightgrass was floating around on top of that boiling water. Fortunately, it finally floated near Su Luo's lower jaw. Such a strong spirit force. Su Luo bit down on it out of instinct. The red 7-leafed nightgrass was fresh, tender, and very juicy, with a sweet and creamy flavor, not bitter at all compared to other medicinal herbs. Only then did Su Luo swallow a mouthful, and she could feel a slow change in her body. The border where the coldness inside her body met the external heat started to mix together a little. Although very slight, but it was very real. Su Luo still had her eyes closed. Her consciousness was still blurred. She was in a semi-coma-like state, but she subconsciously ate all the red 7-leafed night grass. She swallowed the entire plant with its medicinal properties. Very quickly, the coldness inside Su Luo's body and the heat outside started to slowly mix together. How great were the medicinal properties of the red 7-leafed nightgrass! Fortunately, the medicine in the boiling water helped to get rid of some impurities. Otherwise, this time, Su Luo's body would have already exploded and died long ago. Reckon that Little Sky had also thought of this, therefore, he did not stop the little divine dragon. This time, the life essence in Su Luo's body came alive and started to pulse. However, at this moment, Fairy Yin Xia slowly opened her eyes. She glanced at the medicinal cauldron that lacked any movements and coldly said to Li Yao Yao, "Look after the cauldron well. If there's any change, contact this fairy immediately." Li Yao Yao, with a serious expression, answered respectfully, "Yes, master." She didn't need the old witch's order. She still would have humiliated Su Luo, that lowly girl. Fairy Yin Xia looked at Li Yao Yao coldly. She wasn't worried that Li Yao Yao would secretly let Su Luo escape, because she was well aware of the personal enmity between Li Yao Yao and Su Luo. She was only worried that with Li Yao Yao's idiotic mind, she would be deceived by the extremely clever Su Luo. Fairy Yin Xia knew, with regards to cunningness, 10 Li Yao Yaos were not enough to keep one Su Luo busy. Fairy Yin Xia tossed out another sentence. "Remember, no matter what, you must not open the cauldron on your own. If you don't listen to me, then bring your head over to see me." Oomph. After Fairy Yin Xia was done with her threats, she left abruptly. At this rate, it still needed another 3 days, 3 nights, and she had no interest in waiting for this loathsome girl here. After Fairy Yin Xia left, Li Yao Yao looked at the medicinal cauldron, a venomous cold smile appearing in her eyes. "Su Luo, now, once again, you landed in my hands, ha ha ha." Li Yaoyao coldly laughed repeatedly. She turned her palm over. In an instant, a bottle of poison appeared in her hand. While you're sick, I'm going to take your life. Su Luo, this was something you taught me. Li Yaoyao's mouth curled into a taunting sneer, holding the bottle of poison in one hand. She walked, step by step, closer to Su Luo. As long as she killed Su Luo, no matter the consequences, she was willing to shoulder it all. If Su Luo could see the medicinal bottle in her hands, she would definitely frown. Because it was a bottle of corrosive. Even more, it was a concentrated version of the corrosive. Chapter 897, Unexpected Happy Surprise. 4. Originally, it was Fairy Yin Xia who had given it to Li Yaoyao to refine medicinal pills, but not even Fairy Yin Xia would have thought that Li Yaoyao would use such a strong corrosive on Su Luo. Even Su Luo could not bear such a concentrated corrosive. At this time, Su Luo was completely unaware of the imminent danger. She was enduring excruciating pain inside the medicinal cauldron, clenching her teeth till they were making grinding sounds. A lot of spirit force was flowing through the hundreds of bones in her limbs. The coldness inside her and the heat outside were fusing together, emitting flickering specks of white light. In the space, Little Sky again prompted the little divine dragon. Throw that snow lotus out, quickly. Little Sky's face unconsciously turned solemn. He had a natural instinct with regards to dangers. The little divine dragon grabbed the white-colored snow lotus. This time, however, he didn't just randomly toss it, but carefully placed it near Su Luo's mouth. A rich fragrance immediately filled Su Luo's surroundings. Subconsciously, out of instinct, Su Luo, with one mouthful, bit the white-colored snow lotus. If Apothecary Long saw Su Luo just bite the herb like this, he would definitely collapse and want to hit his head on the wall. This was the snow lotus of the 9 heavens and blue sea. How many of those could you find in the entire world? Once, Master had given him a fingernail-sized piece, and he couldn't sleep for 3 days and 3 nights out of excitement. If he knew that Su Luo could eat 3-4 of those in one go, Apothecary Long might have blown his top. At this time, Su Luo, in her semi-coma-like state, she had no idea that she was nibbling on an expensive medicine. She was just following her instincts. Su Luo slowly chewed on it and unconsciously swallowed. Su Luo didn't notice, but while chewing, a white spirit light started flashing in her mouth. That light was incomparable, gorgeous, sparkling and translucent. Soon, this light took over Su Luo's black as ink face. Red 7-leafed nightgrass had already been absorbed by Su Luo's body. The essence of the snow lotus of 9 heavens and blue sea shone. Suddenly, the darkness on Su Luo's face slowly dried, like cracking clay. This time the little divine dragon inside Su Luo's space, supporting his chin with both claws. He unblinkingly stared at Su Luo's face. Even the normally calm Little Sky could not turn his eyes away from staring at Su Luo's face. At this time, the black as ink medicinal juice on Su Luo's face dried up like clay mask, and piece by piece, fell off. Who could have known that under this dark as ink face, hide skin that was as white as jade? The instant they saw Su Luo's face, the little divine dragon and little stone both sucked in a breath of cold air. This. Su Luo didn't know about the change on her face. Now she was immersed in cultivation. She had already touched the threshold of the 6th rank and was just about to enter. Suddenly, Su Luo's eyes suddenly lit up. At that time, Li Yaoyao had already walked to the edge of the medicinal cauldron. All of a sudden, she felt that something was wrong, because she could feel a strong movement started to rush up in the medicinal cauldron. She narrowed her eyes. What the hell is this loathsome girl up to now? She kind of spirit power movement was somewhat familiar. Suddenly, Li Yaoyao's face became deathly white. In such a horrible situation, this cheap girl could still break through. Su Luo, go die. Li Yaoyao took the cauldron lid in one hand, and in the next second wanted to open it and add the concentrated corrosive. However, just at this moment, an extremely strong wave of spirit force erupted from inside of the cauldron. Boom! A loud noise resounded throughout the entire refining hall. Chapter 898, Fleeing for Thousands of Meters, 1. The medicinal cauldron fairy Yin Xia was so exceptionally proud of suddenly shattered into pieces. Because Li Yaoyao was so close to the cauldron, how could she endure such a strong and fierce power? Immediately, her whole body was rolled up by the wave from the blast, and very fiercely, it sent her flying, hitting her against the wall very harshly. Her white dress that covered her entire body was splashed with specks of medicinal juice. At the same time, an agile silhouette, in a flash, rushed outside. There's no need to say that this person was Su Luo. Opportunity knocks but once. Taking advantage of the fact that that old witch Yin Xia was absent, she hurriedly fled. Su Luo's speed, in a split second, rose to lightning fast. However, how could Li Yaoyao let Su Luo escape once again? Although she hadn't gotten up yet, but her green vine quickly wrapped itself towards Su Luo's feet. At the same time, she yelled, "Master! Su Luo is running away." Anger flashed through Su Luo's eyes. Without waiting for Su Luo to strike back, the little divine dragon had already spewed flames towards the green vine. Thereupon, Li Yaoyao's green vine was quickly swallowed up by flames until nothing was left. Su Luo's foot raised. That bottle of concentrated corrosive that had fallen was directly kicked towards Li Yaoyao. "Enjoy it well." The bottle containing the concentrated corrosive suddenly exploded in mid-air. Countless drops of the liquid fell down like rain and covered Li Yaoyao in star-like spots. "Ah!" An alarmed scream erupted from Li Yaoyao's mouth, and she quickly dodged. But how could those droplets that covered the sky with something she wanted to dodge could dodge? Li Yaoyao protected her face, but as for the rest of her body, it was hard to say. Screams of pain continuously came from her mouth. Su Luo saw this, merely laughed coldly. Surveying her surroundings, everything in here was high-quality goods. "Old witch Yin Xia, I'm going to give you heartache again." Su Luo with a wave of her hand. Countless fireballs flew to every corner of the refining hall. At once, flames spread all around, burning with smoke all around. Fairy Yin Xia, who spared no expense to collect all these items to decorate the refining hall, were all burned until nothing was left by Su Luo. Now time was a very important factor for Su Luo. Li Yaoyao was also at the 6th rank. There was no way to determine a winner between them immediately. She had no time to kill Li Yaoyao, so she turned around and ran toward the exit door. Not long after Su Luo exited the door, Fairy Yin Xia had heard of the news and immediately rushed over. She saw Li Yaoyao, who was rolling on the ground in extreme pain, then looked at the refining hall billowing with smoke. An angry expression took over her face, and with one grab picked up Li Yaoyao. Where is she? Her refining hall was actually burnt to this extent. Damn it! Damn it! Fairy Yin Xia was so furious her face turned ghastly pale with fists clenched tightly. She had already lost her most valuable medicinal chest. Now even her refining hall was destroyed. So many years of painstaking effort, she was simply about to go mad. She originally thought that this loathsome girl couldn't make any more waves. The result? She destroyed all of her efforts in just a moment. The more Fairy Yin Xia thought about it, the angrier she became. She was itching to capture Su Luo and ruthlessly chop her into mince meat to feed to the dogs. At this moment, Fairy Yin Xia's eyes turned as sharp as ice blades, itching to stab Li Yaoyao to death. Li Yaoyao was picked up with both legs dangling in the air, looking extremely pitiful. She ran. Li Yaoyao's eyes were hazy with tears, face contorted with pain. Because she could feel the blisters formed from the corrosive on her arms and legs, making a sizzling sound. She could feel her skin being eaten away by the corrosive. Painfully, so painfully as if her vital organs were tearing apart. She really wanted to immediately pass out. Did you see her face or not? Fairy Yin Xia asked the question she was most concerned with. Chapter 899, Fleeing for Thousands of Meters, 2. You could say that the most important reason for her to capture Su Luo was her face. Li Yaoyao bit her lower lip and slowly nodded. Saw it. What did her face look like? Fairy Yin Xia was most concerned about this. She painstakingly caught Su Luo just to find out that face of Su Luo's, in the end, had what relationship with that woman. But at this moment, Fairy Yin Xia's fiendish appearance really frightened Li Yaoyao. That formidable pressure of an expert frightened Li Yaoyao so much that she fainted immediately. Idiot! Fairy Yin Xia looked at Li Yaoyao, who had fainted, and kicked her out of anger. So useless, fainting from being frightened. In this, Su Luo was much stronger than Li Yaoyao. At such a critical time, how could Fairy Yin Xia let Li Yaoyao faint? As a result, one could see her heavily slap Li Yaoyao's face. Slap! The clear sound resonated in the room. A distinctly red swollen handprint with 5 fingers appeared on Li Yaoyao's face. Li Yaoyao was slapped awake. Without waiting for her to open her eyes, Fairy Yin Xia had already taken hold of Li Yaoyao's neck and glared at her like a fiend. Don't give this old lady the act of fainting. Quickly spit it out. What did Su Luo's face look like? What does it look like? Li Yaoyao's mind was dizzy. She wanted to say, but couldn't convey it. Fairy Yin Xia was anxious half to death, so she only simplified the question and asked, I'm only asking you if Su Luo's face was the same as before? Fairy Yin Xia's hold was really strong enough to nearly snap her neck. This was an easily answered question. No, not the same. Li Yaoyao continuously shook her head. Really not the same at all. Having heard what was said, the veins on Fairy Yin Xia's forehead exploded out. Since it was not the same, then there's only one possibility. Master, save me. The noble and stubborn Li Yaoyao finally lowered her head. She was really in a lot of pain. However, where did Fairy Yin Xia have the time to pay any attention to her right now? She directly tossed Li Yaoyao to the ground and said in a cold voice, You couldn't even guard a sick person. What's the use of this fairy raising you? The more Fairy Yin Xia thought about it, the angrier she got. So, she once again kicked Li Yaoyao and sent her flying. A fully cooked duck escaped and flew away like this. Really hateful. Fairy Yin Xia clenched her fists and directly flew out. At the same time, she coldly ordered in a loud voice, Everybody, quickly guard the exit. If you let that loathsome girl escape, all of you will die. How fast was Fairy Yin Xia's speed? In no time she saw Su Luo's light blue dressed back. Loathsome girl, see where you can run to. Fairy Yin Xia was extremely angry, and with a flick of her sleeve, she sent a blue ball of light towards Su Luo's back. Su Luo had a very intense feeling of danger. Nothingness of space instantly surrounded her body, but Su Luo was still injured by the great strength of that ball of light. Su Luo directly spit out a mouthful of blood. Su Luo's body swayed, but she didn't fall down. Luckily, the nothingness of space blocked some of it, so she wasn't beat to death by it. However, the injury Su Luo sustained also wasn't light. Old witch, I'll show you something hard to deal with. At the same time, a ball containing inexhaustible power was smashed towards Fairy Yin Xia. Spirit pinball? Fairy Yin Xia gnashed her teeth and angrily shouted. Also, she was very clear that this spirit pinball was hers. Originally, it was placed together with the precious spirit pills in the medicinal chest. So that medicinal chest really was taken away by this loathsome girl. What kind of disaster did she bring about? After grabbing this girl back, the result was having all her treasures destroyed. Chapter 900. Fleeing for thousands of meters, 3. Right now, Fairy Yin Xia really wished she could slap Su Luo to death. But just how big was the formidable power of the spirit pinball? In the next instant, Fairy Yin Xia subconsciously rolled to the side. Even she would not dare to confront this super high-level spirit pinball directly. Su Luo was very well aware in her heart, if she let the old witch Yin Xia see her face, that the only path left for her is her death. Therefore, run, run, run. Su Luo ran straight toward the edge of the flat boundary. There were only a few hundred meters left between her and the boundary. Su Luo didn't have time to think. She directly smashed another spirit pinball towards it. She got 2 spirit pinballs from Fairy Yin Xia. One was used to smash Fairy Yin Xia. The other one will be used to clear the way. With the spirit pinball smashed over, that boundary immediately shook violently. For a moment, the entire palace shook violently and swayed. Under such intense vibration, Su Luo could barely stand. She shook violently with the ground. Very quickly, the boundary couldn't bear the formidable power of the spirit pinball. The entire boundary answered with a loud crack. In a flash, splash, countless streams of river water poured into that 10 square meters wide hole. Because the palace was built underwater, therefore water poured inside from all sides. The streams were so huge as to be astonishing. At this moment, in front of Su Luo was the surging stream of river. Behind was the wrathful fairy Yin Xia making threatening gestures. Su Luo didn't even need to think. She directly chose to go forward. Su Luo rushed forward, directly sticking her head straight into the turbulent waters. Originally, Su Luo's thoughts was still tangled. Going through the muddy water, her speed would decrease to the lowest. However, once she rushed forward in the water, her speed didn't decrease at all. The reason might have been because of the nothingness of space. Like this, the situation was greatly in Su Luo's favor. Because she had to dodge the spirit pinball, therefore Fairy Yin Xia fell a little behind. However, because she was behind by a little, Su Luo had the time to smash another spirit pinball and completely collapsing the entire boundary. The veins on Fairy Yin Xia's forehead popped out because of her rage with blood filling her eyes. That loathsome girl stole her spirit pinballs and used them all on her. Detestable. Extremely detestable. She was smart. She even guessed that Su Luo would use the second spirit pinball to clear the way. But Fairy Yin Xia was certain victory was within her grasp. Because from her point of view, with river water rushing in, Su Luo going against the tide simply could not get out. However, what made her dumbstruck, she only could helplessly look on at Su Luo's disappearing back. Shit. Fairy Yin Xia slapped forward with her palm, immediately creating thousands of underwater waves. The river water rushing in was very fast. In less than 15 minutes, the entire underwater palace was filled with water. Master, the maids were all staring at Fairy Yin Xia. Chase. Chase that loathsome girl down. There will be a huge reward. If you can't catch her, then hand me your heads. Fairy Yin Xia was impossibly furious. She strongly flung her sleeves. As to Su Luo, because she was enveloped by nothingness of space, the strength of the drag in water didn't affect her at all. Su Luo's speed underwater was basically the same compared to on land. She shuttled back and forth quickly. Soon, she had already covered several thousands of meters. However, she had just reached the surface and took a deep breath. The Banyan Tree Lake was connected to the Cold River. Cold River was a gigantic river stretching across eastern Ling and western Jin. In length, it stretched from the Eastern Ling Empire's east coast to western Jin's Great Canyons in the west. The river was very wide, with ravines on both sides, twisting and turning. The water flowed rapidly and surged up violently. It appeared extremely terrifying. Chapter 901. Fleeing for thousands of meters. 4. However, the two nations of Eastern Ling and Western Jin's trade and commerce actually used this cold river a lot. In a single breath, Su Luo swam directly from Banyan Tree Lake to Cold River. Only then did she emerge to the water's surface. At this time, she was already drained. Suddenly, Su Luo felt something sweet in her throat, and she spat out a mouthful of blood. The blood dyed a part of the water's surface red. Seeing it shocked the eye and astonished the heart. However, it quickly flowed away with the surging waves of the cold river. Su Luo covered the place near her heart, that place aching dully. Su Luo knew she was really injured this time. That old witch, her moves were truly ruthless. Holding her chest that gave off repressed pain, Su Luo helplessly humphed. At this time, a merchant ship sailed westwards from the east. Su Luo's eyes immediately lit up. As expected, really was that exiting from a watery dead end. She once again saw the light at the end of the tunnel. When she was about to give up all hope, a ship actually sailed over. Su Luo first hid below the water's surface and waited for the moment when the ship sailed over her head. Without saying another word, Su Luo flipped over and boarded the ship. This was a very large merchant ship, close to 100 meters in length with a width about 30 meters. The ship's hull was very tall. At a cursory glance it had 3 stories. The bigger the ship, the better it was for hiding her whereabouts. Therefore, Su Luo was extremely satisfied with this ship that she saw. The only thing she was worried about was since she could see this ship, then Fairy Yin Xia would also be able to see it. So, staying on this ship was just a stopgap measure and not a long-term plan. However, Su Luo did not actually run towards the top, but instead hid very quietly and secretly in a corner on the ground floor. Su Luo knew staying on this ship wasn't a long-term measure, because Yin Xia, that old witch, absolutely would chase after her. Not only had Su Luo stolen away Yin Xia's medicine chest, she had made a complete mess of the old witch's refining room. Moreover, she even used the spirit pinball on her body. In the end, she actually destroyed her old nest. This animosity was absolutely irreconcilable. If this old witch doesn't get enraged until she went insane would be strange. It could be assumed that the roads in the future wouldn't be smooth, because the old witch was determined to never let her go. Be that as it may, the moment she thought of the old witch's appearance of being angered to the point of collapse, Su Luo still felt her anger dissolved a little. Yin Xia, that old witch, had imprisoned her for so long and still applied medicinal juice on her face. As this animosity was absolutely irreconcilable, although Su Luo had taken some of her treasures, but that was far from enough. Su Luo clenched her fists tightly. Wait until today's challenge was over. Wait till after she gets strong. She will definitely get avenged today's hatred. As things quieted down, she couldn't help but start to plan the road from here on out. Following this, where should she go? In which direction should she run? Originally, if Master was here, naturally, she obviously would go towards Cloud Mist Peak. But hearing the meaning in what Yin Xia, that old witch, had said, Master was probably not at Cloud Mist Peak. Rather than bringing 2 disasters to her 2 seniors, wouldn't it be better to? Yeah, only now did Su Luo suddenly remembered Senior Ice Cube. She'd forgotten about Senior Ice Cube. Since the moment the old witch appeared, she hadn't seen him since. Su Luo had a bad premonition in her heart. Senior Ice Cube couldn't have been so easily disposed of by the old witch, right? She hoped not. At this time, Su Luo had already stopped placing her hope on Ziyu, because even if he was around, he was no match for Yin Xia, that old witch. Night time, it was quiet. The biting cold river wind blew over. Right at this time, all of a sudden, a bad premonition appeared in Su Luo's heart. The old witch wouldn't have come chasing after her, right? Su Luo stretched out her head to look. She saw that up ahead was lots of ships, densely packed and blocking the way. A white figure stood tall and upright on the sailcloth. This was a young woman, approximately 17 or 18 years of age. One could only see her dressed all in a white silk skirt. Her pretty and proper appearance at this time was enveloped in icy frost, indifferent and heartless. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.